get us started here. I'll now call the September 15th board meeting of the Lane Community College Board of Education to order. In recognition of guidance by OHA and the CDC, this meeting is being held remotely to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and to promote the safety and well-being of LCC stakeholders. I'd like to remind board members and staff to keep themselves muted and to use the hand raise feature when you would like to speak. Board members are also asked to have their video turned on so you are visible to the viewing public. Donna, could you please take the roll?
Yes. Holly Johnson.
Present.
Angela Van Kraus.
Present.
Mike Eister.
Here.
Steve Mattel.
Here.
Austin Folnacki.
Here.
Rosie Pryor.
Here.
Lisa Fragola.
Present. Thank you. So this evening we have a representative from LCCEF, Fiora Starchild Wolf, who is going to read the land acknowledgement for us. Is Fiora here? Great. Fiora, were you able to get a copy of that?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us.
We begin our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted and destroyed. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya.
Thank you, Fiora. So I would like to adopt the agenda with flexibility and do that through unanimous consent. Is there anyone who would like to oppose the adoption of the agenda with flexibility? Seeing none, we have adopted the agenda with flexibility. So I am going to go ahead and move us on to the President's Report. Dr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Fragola. Welcome everyone to the September board meeting. It's been a very busy summer and my full report's in your packet. I want to thank everyone that's worked very hard over the summer to prepare for school, whether you were cleaning the buildings, preparing coursework, working on our technology, or advising our students. I want to take a few minutes to just review where we are today based on the circumstances of the pandemic. You know, when spring term ended, we all had very high hopes for a full return to campus this fall. But then the Delta variant hit. We knew for our college, a vaccine mandate would provide an extra blanket of protection to our employees and our students. The board passed the resolution in July that required our students and employees to be vaccinated against the COVID-19 virus. Within a very short period of time, though, we heard from our employees that they really wouldn't feel safe on campus unless we did not permit the personal exemptions and we didn't use the honor system. So at the September work session, we got it clarified that Lane would not allow philosophical exemptions and we would require evidence of vaccination through the upload of vax cards. Last week, we heard from President Biden announcing vaccine and testing mandates for certain groups of employees. Following that, we've now heard that boosters are on the way. Teams all over our campus are now planning so that Lane has a system that will upload the vaccine and attestation cards and forms, that will track testing data, track booster shots, and then produce timely reports. We recently heard that the governor may even come out with another executive order to provide guidance to higher ed. We remain nimble. The virus will continue to drive our plans and we will continue to respond. So as we work on implementation, I want to highlight the safety measures that Lane Community College has. Number one, we are requiring vaccinations for students and employees. We are requiring all on-campus students, employees upload their vax cards. We will be publicizing regularly our vaccination rates. We are conducting a testing program in line with public health recommendations. We'll be providing PPE at no cost to our employees as required or recommended by health authorities. We will be primarily remote until October 24th, gradually bringing back more student services and hands-on learning. All this to reduce COVID exposure. We'll be practicing social distancing across all campuses to reduce the in-person class sizes where necessary and remaining with social distancing. We are requiring masks inside and outside on campus where social distancing isn't possible. We're installing MERV 13 filters where possible all over campus and providing HEPA filters for offices, shared spaces, or classrooms upon request. We're adding bottle filling stations across our campus to provide convenient water sources without worrying about germ contamination at the drinking fountains. We're putting tent-like shelters up across the campus so people can eat outside or meet safely outside. We'll be conducting daily sanitation of high-touch areas and providing cleaning logs in our classrooms. We'll be flushing water weekly in our buildings and reporting out on chlorine levels. We'll be temporarily restricting campus travel and in-person meetings until we know it's safe, and providing a mechanism for employees to request remote work assignments where possible for employees who are medically fragile, live or work with somebody who is fragile, or who has childcare issues related to the pandemic, or even those who just feel uncomfortable given the Delta surge. So in closing, we tend to make Lane Community College one of the safest colleges in Oregon this fall. And I truly want to thank everybody who's been spending so much of their time. They've come back from vacation times and they've been taking personal time just to work on this effort. So I want to thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Get myself unmuted there. Okay, let's move on to statements from the audience. Board Policy BP 320 states that the board chair will explain at the outset of statements from the audience that we will not respond directly to issues raised by the audience, but will refer those issues to the president for appropriate action. However, we do appreciate attendees' participation in tonight's LCC board meeting and the willingness of stakeholders to address the board. To participate in public comment, you can go to the Board of Education website and follow the link and sign up. You can go to the Lane website and click the board meeting featured at the bottom of the page. You'll enter the board meeting as an attendee, but you will be moved over to the meeting as a participant when it is your turn to speak. This will allow you to start your video if you choose, and the meeting host will unmute your speaker. Takes a little moment, but it does work. Please keep your comments to the 3 minutes allotted to each speaker. Do we have a timer up tonight? We do have a timer up tonight. And I will ask people to keep their statements to 3 minutes, and we'll provide a gentle reminder, hopefully at a pause or at the end of a sentence. So let's see who we have up first this evening. So I have Jessica Alvarado from the LCC Counseling Department, followed by Jim Arnold from the LCC Counseling Department.
I was changing settings, so did you say my name, Jessica?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Welcome,
thank you.
Jessica.
Thank you very much. All right, so go ahead and start.
Yes, please.
So to President Hamilton, Provost Jarrell, and Lane's Board of Education, thank you for this opportunity to provide a verbal statement. I have provided this written statement to Donna Smollett for you to review at a later time. I am a former ICU registered nurse graduate from our nursing program who has worked 25 plus years in healthcare. I've been a counselor here at Lane since 1997. I spent much of my healthcare career working with patients in isolation for a number of infectious diseases. I truly care about Lane the work we do, and the students that we serve. So I'm requesting careful consideration and planning as the college moves forward toward a reopening plan related to the pandemic, vaccination status requirements, and exemptions. I want to thank this board and our administration for shifting plans to as much remote work as possible and for revisioning the verification process for vaccines. I do believe the safety of our community has been a factor in these difficult decisions. Myself, my colleagues, and students are only as safe as the weakest link in requirements for vaccinations and precautions. I'm especially concerned about the personal philosophical exemption that was initially proposed. I'm guessing the reasons for this was to be politically correct or to allow for the rights of individuals who oppose vaccinations and precautions to be respected. Under normal circumstances, I too support freedom of speech, right to control what goes into one's body and to make individual healthcare decisions. But there's nothing normal about this pandemic. Respecting these rights does not respect the rights of students, staff, etc., to learn and work in a safe environment. If a person's immune system will not tolerate being vaccinated, then they also are not safe in a working environment that will potentially expose them to COVID-19 and the variants that may emerge. The personal philosophical exemption should not be even considered an option. This exemption only condones not getting vaccinated and behaviors that support safe practices. I'm grateful it has been taken off the table for now, and I'm hoping it will not be considered an opinion in the future. We need to take action now for winter term November 1st when registration begins. And it will come very quickly, and we'll need to have an adequate vetting process in place to process the vaccinations, medical, and religious exemptions. The religious exemptions need to also be vetted and a process to do so clearly outlined. I'm concerned that planning that has moved forward at times without adequate representation and voice from students, faculty, and staff, frontline employees. Healthcare facilities and work groups are saying the only way out of this pandemic is to push vaccinations. Peace Health of Oregon, Washington, Alaska are saying 1 to 2 in 10 patients hospitalized are fully vaccinated individuals. Also, the Delta variant is much more contagious. What about other variants to come? And I see my time's almost up. We all need to work together to keep the health and safety of everyone a priority. Thank you for this opportunity to share my perspective.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Thanks for noticing the clock there.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're going to move on to Jim Arnold from the LCC Counseling Department, followed by Lisa Kolbus from LCC Social Science.
Okay, am I on? Is that what we're doing here?
You are, yes. Go
Okay,
ahead.
wonderful. Thanks so much. Members of the board and President Hamilton, good evening. My name is Jim Arnold. I have a part-time faculty appointment as a counselor in the LCC Counseling Center. Prior to my current job, though, I served a lifetime of positions in higher education, largely in academic administration, working at the college, university, and state system levels. Right up front, I'd like to sincerely thank board members for your attention to public health by adopting a vaccine mandate for our campus. I truly applaud your efforts. After you, the board, passed the vaccine requirement in July, the administration then went about trying to figure out how to satisfy this directive. My assessment of the implementation of the vaccine mandate so far, however, hasn't been all that favorable, though I do acknowledge the positive steps have been taken recently to address some of its limitations. I have been encouraged by the decision to take a timeout from the whole process in order to put in place a proof of vaccination requirement and the elimination of the personal and philosophical exemptions. I'd like to make sure that the entire process is as rigorous as it can be. I have a few recommendations, and here they are. I recommend that the college not delay in the implementation of the revised process any further. Fall term is upon us. I recommend that anyone who wishes to claim a medical exemption provide a signed statement from a physician, which would then be validated by LCC. I recommend that for anyone who wishes to claim a religious exemption, a signed statement by a third party be included, preferably the signature of a religious leader, which would also be verified at the campus level. You may or may not have seen the New York Times article last weekend on Saturday about religious exemptions and how entirely non-religious people have tended to use this exemption as a loophole. I think LCC should do everything possible to try and mitigate this kind of abuse to the system. I recommend that procedures be developed and implemented that identifies all students registered for fall term and ensures that they are vaccinated prior to the time they show up for in-person classes. There is no time to waste. The administration's plan to delay the vaccination requirement to winter term for students already enrolled is really wholly inadequate. I recommend that the administration and the bargaining units reach agreement on safe working conditions immediately. I'm really not sure what the holdup has been. I showed up for the president's COVID advisory team meeting Tuesday morning, only to learn that it had been canceled. I'm curious what was more important. Finally, to sum up, I recommend that we always put safety first. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much, Jim. Next up, we have Lisa Kolbus, LCC Social Science, followed by Wendy Simmons, LCC Health and PE. Do we have Lisa? Yep, there we go. Hi, Lisa. You want to go ahead and unmute yourself? Or actually, somebody do that for her.
Okay, do I have that right?
Welcome. You're ready to go.
Welcome. Good evening, President Hamilton, Prof. Gerald, and members of the LCC Board of Education. Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Lisa Kolbus, and I am a psychology professor here at LCC. I have taught here for the last 23 years. Each of you have had to make incredibly difficult decisions to keep the college and the community safe as possible during a time of global crisis. Tonight, I come to ask you to make additional difficult decisions. I'm going to ask you each to commit to continuing to keep the safety of our campus and our community foremost in your mind. I was elated when I found out that you had committed us to being a fully vaccinated campus. LCC was a leader in our state. We were the first community college to announce a vaccine mandate. And then I read President Hamilton's letter, and I cried. I cried when I read the update. I was stunned when I read that you had decided not to verify medical, religious, and personal exemptions. The day you announced LCC's vaccine mandate, you created a social contract with the staff and students at LCC. We form social contracts in all of our relationships. Our social contracts outline the expectations we have for each member in our given community. The social contract at LCC now includes vaccination. All members of our community are expected to be vaccinated. Nationally, vaccine mandates are extremely controversial. Much of that controversy centers around political ideology. I'm not here to discuss politics. I'm here to talk about science and statistics. Today, I visited the LCC vaccination tracking page. As of August 26th, 93.6% of LCC staff was vaccinated. Sadly, only 80% of reporting students are vaccinated. Most of those 20% claiming an exemption will do so using personal exemptions. Why? It's extremely hard to get a medical exemption, as it should be. Personal exemptions are typically based on pseudoscience. We do our campus community no favors when we allow pseudoscience to control campus health and safety. The Delta strain is devastating Oregon. Our medical system is overwhelmed. On average, a person infected with Delta infects 5 to 7 other people. Previous strains were spread to 1 to 2 other people. In her executive order dated August 13th, Governor Brown mandated that,
Lisa, that is your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd encourage you to send your entire statement to the
I will.
board if you didn't have a chance to finish it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Wendy Simmons from LCC Health and PE, followed by Jim Saul, LCC Social Sciences. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Wendy Simmons from Health and PE faculty member. And first off, I want to thank the board for their unanimous action to require vaccines and for making it clear at the work session earlier this month that the philosophical exemption should not be allowed. Faculty support the board's decisions and are grateful for your leadership. I also want to share with you that the philosophical exemption is not legally required. And I will read you this memo from Bennett Hartman Attorneys at Law. It's also posted publicly on the LCCEA website. The association requested information regarding whether Lane Community College can legally deny a COVID-19 vaccine exemption based on philosophical belief. The answer to that question is yes. Lane Community College is free to allow or deny such an exemption because neither state nor federal statutory or constitutional law require the LCC to offer a philosophical belief exemption. Currently, less than half the states in the United States even offer a philosophical belief exemption to students. In Oregon, the philosophical belief exemption is a matter of statutory law and applies only to K through 12 schools and certain universities. See Oregon Revised Statute 433.267 and 433.282. Even for the entities subject to the statutory requirement, the OHA Mandatory Vaccination Rule, Oregon Administrative Rule 333-019-1030, adopted pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order, Emergency Authority, allows only a medical and religious exemption and supersedes the existing law. And that's Oregon Revised Statute 401.192. The reason it allows the medical and religious exemption is to comply with federal laws. The same federal laws would require LCC to also recognize medical and religious exemptions if it adopted a COVID-19 vaccination requirement. However, no law or constitutional provision limits LCC's policy-making authority regarding disallowance of a philosophical belief exemption. Thank you again for your hard work and your attention to these very important matters.
Thank you, Wendy. Up next, we have Jim Salt from the LCC Social Sciences, followed by, I believe, a joint statement from Adrian Mitchell and Frankie Cohen, LCCEA and LCCEF presidents. Is Jim here with us? You're welcome to turn your video on if you choose to, Jim. Otherwise, you can go ahead and start.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just speak. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
My name is Jim Salt, and I'm also nearing starting my 24th year teaching at LCC and teaching sociology here. And like my colleagues tonight, I had prepared remarks, but I want to respect President Hamilton's statements at the beginning of the meeting tonight, which acknowledges that the administration's planned implementation of the board's vaccination directive and other safety plans was not meeting with the expectations of the faculty and staff of this college and would not have provided the safety that our college requires. That's an acknowledgement. I particularly appreciate acknowledging that was a reaction to our concerns. This was not acknowledged in the communications out to the faculty and staff afterwards. So it's important that we actually be honest with each other, that we work together as partners and not simply blame these changes on the Delta surge as was communicated out to the staff. We have to come together and make our school as safe as possible. And I'm very encouraged by Marge's statement tonight. I'm very encouraged by the statements that I heard board members made at your last work session. I look forward to the board taking action tonight, to taking any formal action the board sees fit in order to ensure that these steps are move forward. And the last thing I'll say is I woke up yesterday with what I hope is a cold, and I got tested this afternoon. Waiting in line and seeing all the nervous people. I also visited my doctor, who told me that he now has almost 30 friends and family members who have been COVID positive, and many of them have died. It just brought home to me, excuse me, well, the vulnerability. I live outside of town. I barely interact with anyone. The vulnerability that we have individually is extreme. For us to come together as a college and to build the safety practices that we'll need to in order to keep all members of our college safe is going to be extraordinary, but we must take all of those steps. We cannot do this in a cavalier way. And so again, I appreciate very much the board's original vote for vaccination, their statements at the last meeting, and especially Marge's statements tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. So I believe Adrian Mitchell is going first and followed by Frankie Cohen. Great, there's Adrian. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Board of Education. My name is Adrian Mitchell, and I serve as president of LCCEA, representing the 200 full-time and 315 part-time faculty at Lane. I will read the first half of a joint statement from LCCEF and LCCEA, and Frankie Cohen will read the second half. We wish to publicly express appreciation and full support for your unanimous vote in July to mandate vaccines. In addition, we greatly appreciate and fully support your clarifications provided at your work session in September about the implementation of the vaccine requirement, including required proof of vaccination status and limiting exemptions to medical and religious only. Medical and religious exemptions are the only legally required exemptions at community colleges in Oregon, as confirmed by attorneys for both OEA and AFT. LCCEA and LCCEF continue to advocate for the safety of our campus and broader community at LCC, locally and at the state level, and deeply appreciate your partnership in this endeavor. Thank you.
Frankie?
Okay, good evening, everybody. Board members. I'm Frankie Cohen, president of LCCEF, representing the 329 contracted and 158 non-contracted jobs at LCC. I will read the second half of the joint LCCEF-LCCEA statement as follows. We recognize the full implementation of the vaccine requirement is in process and takes time. At the same time, we are confident all systems for documenting vaccine status and medical or religious exemptions can be in place using existing software at LCC prior to the student registration for winter term, which begins November 1st. We fully support and have been advocating and will continue to advocate for the enforcement of the requirements for everyone on campus, faculty and classified included. We deeply appreciate your leadership, which is so critical for the campus community and the public good. Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie. Up next, we have Erin Bartley from LCC Arts and Humanities, followed by Fiora Starchild-Wolf from LCC Enrollment Services. And that will be our last person speaking this evening. Erin?
Good evening, President Hamilton and members of the board. My name is Erin Bartley, and I'm the Faculty Professional Development Coordinator here at Lane. Tonight, I want to give you a brief overview of the report I emailed to you earlier today to give you a sense of what FPD and the faculty accomplished in 2020 to 21. To start, I would like to highlight how in the midst of a global pandemic and in the face of their own personal challenges, faculty were called upon to redevelop all of their courses for online and remote delivery while supporting their students. It's amazing that faculty engaged in any professional development beyond the minimum, and yet they did. Here's a snapshot of the year. Our Professional Activities Committee approved more than 75 requests for funding to attend online conferences, courses, and workshops. FPD approved 5 faculty inquiry groups focused on topics like active learning in STEM, course-based undergraduate research, best practices in online learning, and culturally responsive teaching. Over 100 faculty members participated in the Inclusive Teaching Event Series, which offered talks, workshops, panels, and informal discussions focused on topics like college belonging, universal design for learning, and culturally sustaining pedagogy. 7 faculty members went on sabbatical, and we'll learn more about their experiences next Tuesday afternoon during the sabbatical presentations. You're all invited to attend. Our Faculty Connections orientation and mentoring program supported 9 new faculty members through a very disorienting year. FPD also promotes the ATC's Teaching Pairs program, which focuses on peer observation for online instructors. Also this year, FPD collaborated with many other campus programs to launch a new Center for Teaching and Learning. Along with developing an online calendar and building a website, in spring, the CTL hosted a 2-week online symposium where over 125 participants shared their expertise in teaching and learning. Kevin Steves and I coordinate the CTL and will present a more thorough report to you at a later date. This coming year, FPD will launch a speaker series titled Democracy Conversations, which will examine the ways civic discourse inside and outside the classroom are impacted by challenges to democratic principles and values. To end, I want to highlight the work of over 30 faculty members who serve on FPD committees. Our committee members review FPD's budget, read and approve applications for grants, plan programs and events, and facilitate discussions. I also want to thank Lane's instructional designers who have supported faculty in our pivot to online and remote teaching by offering courses, individual consultations, and more. I hope you get the chance to read through the report to get a deeper sense of the scope of the work undertaken this year. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Erin. It's great to have that highlighted. Up next, we have Fiora Starchild Wolf, and we do have one more person after that, Peggy Oberstaller. So Fiora, is Fiora here? Do we have, oh, there we go.
Hello.
Welcome.
My name is Fiora Starchild Wolf. I'm an Enrollment Services Advisor and the Co-Chair for LCCEF. First, as an employee who works with students directly, I would like to thank the board for making the health of our employees, our students, and our greater community your high priority by your unanimous vote to require COVID vaccines for fall term. A majority of employees, as well as a majority of students, also support this mandate. However, our administration's methods of implementation have left much to be desired. We are disappointed that though our IT department quickly created a form for the college community to complete and submit, this form did not require any documentation of either a vaccine card or a true exemption. We have learned that though the philosophical exemption may be utilized by Oregon statute, only a medical or religious exemption is required. And though our college has been able to securely upload sensitive documentation for enrollment services, financial aid, the bursar, and other offices around campus using eTrieve soft docs since last fall, though we do this every week, the administration, once being told that forms must include documentation, stated that the college must outsource this process. In addition, rather than quickly updating the existing form to require documentation uploads, our administration took down the form that had been in place and removed the one registration hold that had been in place for those students not registered yet for fall. I am now regularly getting calls from students asking me how can they fulfill the vaccine requirement, and the majority of them want this in place. This is disturbing on so many levels. Most importantly, that it has served to delay this process to the point where it is more and more difficult to have a vaccine requirement in place by the beginning of fall. The leaders of the unions have now been told that, in fact, the vaccine mandate form may not be in place until late October. Winter registration begins November 1st. To our view on LCCEF, it is difficult to see this as anything more than a delay. As co-chair of LCCEF, I have heard from a number of IT employees that the soft docs form can easily and quickly be updated to require an upload of documentation and even to directly release a hold and banner so that it would be difficult to get the system in place. It would not be difficult to get the system in place immediately. As an enrollment services advisor, I was part of one of the teams that began using soft docs last fall so that students and others could easily and securely upload their sensitive documents. This is neither something that should take long, certainly not until October, nor is it something that needs to be outsourced instead of given to our own classified IT team. If any board members would like to see examples of forms that the college already uses that require uploads of sensitive documentation, I encourage you to go to the Enrollment Services Forms page through a search on our website. There you will find such forms as one to update a social security number, change a student's name, or correct a birth date on our record.
Thank you, Fiora. Good timing there. So we're going to go on to Peggy Oberstaller from LCC Health and PE, followed by Kenny Asheri from LCCEF and LCC Technology. Peggy, welcome. Okay, go ahead.
There we go. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Members of the board, President Hamilton, good evening. This statement I'm reading was written by math faculty Wendy Rawlinson, who gave permission for me to read it here. I'm about to begin my 31st year at LCC, and I have serious concerns about going back into the classroom fall term. I have happily given a lot of myself to this institution over the years, and I am shaken to realize how little the college cares to protect me and others during this pandemic. According to the college website, LCC requires students and employees who will be attending classes or working at any location to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 prior to the start of the fall academic term. When I submitted my personal vaccine information, I was shocked to find that no proof of vaccination was asked for. I can't imagine this is what the board had in mind, especially when proof could easily be achieved through a simple upload. The college has the software and expertise in-house to do this already. The current tracking system strikes me as flawed in several ways. It isn't really a requirement. With no proof of vaccination required and no system to evaluate exemptions, this is an extremely lax policy. If I were a student who was against vaccination, I would leave the reporting system feeling as if my reluctance was being facilitated very nicely by the college. The dashboard is incomplete and potentially misleading. The dashboard tracking vaccination status does not list the number of exemptions. If I make some logical deductions, I can see that as of August 26, about 19% of the students who had reported were unvaccinated. Currently, there are no plans to restrict these students to remote classes for fall term. This means potentially 1 in 5 students sitting in front of me in a classroom will be unvaccinated. I am absolutely not okay with this. Students who do not complete the requirement by the start of fall term should be restricted from in-person classes. LCC offers a large variety of online and remote classes for them to choose from. I am not interested in trading my health and/or life for the rewards of in-person teaching while the pandemic is still ongoing. I want to thank the board for their unanimous action to require vaccines and for their clarification on philosophical exemptions. As faculty, I support these decisions and appreciate their leadership. I ask the board to require the administration to reach an agreement on safe working conditions without further delay. We need an agreement now to protect the health and safety of our campus and the entire community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Peggy. Up next, we have Kenny Asheri, LCCEF and Technology.
Hi,
Welcome.
board. Hi, good evening. Good evening. Thank you for your time tonight. I want to stand to commend my fellow IT professionals and their incredible work and expedient implementation of an LCC tool to collect vaccination information of the campus community. In a flash, our teams were able to deliver a functional tool by utilizing existing vendor products to support to collect and report community vaccination information. I also want to express my appreciation for Dr. Plott's direct communication with college programmers addressing outsourcing of work that's performed in-house. I appreciate the use of vendor software as tools for the team, and I hope to see in the future an increase in staff to continue maintenance and implementation of vendor tools. As you're probably aware, we're bringing more and more technology systems online, which requires more implementation and ongoing maintenance. I look forward to a supportive environment with adequate in-house staffing to bring LCC the best quality technology services. I also stand in support of vaccination and vaccination education, especially for persons who might be hesitant to not be vaccinated. I appreciate previous decisions made by the board, and I hope we work together for a safe community. Thank you for your time tonight and have a great evening.
Thank you, Kenny. That was our last speaker tonight for comments from the audience. I guess I jumped the gun on that one a little bit. And I did want to appreciate that people were mindful of the time this evening of the 3 minutes. I am going to move us on to the consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion to adopt the consent agenda, is there anything that a board member would like to pull from the consent agenda? This is our opportunity to pull an item from the consent agenda. Does anybody want to do that? Okay.
Move approval.
Thank you. Second?
Second. I'll second.
Great. Moved by Rosie, seconded by Austin and Steve. So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Donna, could you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson.
Here.
I think it's a aye or nay.
Here. Aye.
Okay, thanks. Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Mike Eister.
Yes.
Steve Mattel.
Yes.
Austin Folnaghy.
Yes.
Rosie Pryor.
Yes.
Lisa Fragola.
Yes, that motion carries. So let's move on to action items. The first action item that we have this evening is our OCCA Board Policy 2715 Code of Ethics Standards of Practice. Okay, and I believe we have Michael Blade here to discuss that.
Yes, thanks, Chair Fragola. So this is the one that you approved previously. We talked about it at the work session. There was a little bit of confusion, I guess, certainly by me and perhaps even among members of the board as to how we were going to move forward. What you have in the agenda and what you have attached here too is the OCC board policy with the last sentence, which reads, each member of the Board of Education will reaffirm adherence to the Code of Ethics by signing a statement at the annual organizational meeting removed. That was my understanding of what you all wanted me to do at the work session. There was one board member who thought that wasn't what we were going to do and that we were actually going to have a affirmation prepared. And so that's why this action item is here. If we are going to take that out, it's slightly different than what you approved before. And so there needs to be another approval with that particular sentence taken out. If you're not going to if you decide not to take that sentence out, and we're going to have an affirmation, then no action needs to be taken on this item because you've already approved it as is. So.
Great. And so to clarify, we have approved this policy previously with a statement including the affirmation. So we would take no action tonight if we want to keep the affirmation. If we want to remove it, we would take action tonight. And I did want to clarify that in our agenda setting meeting, I looked back at my notes, and in my notes, I had that the board directed legal counsel to look at the history of if we had done anything in the past and bring that to us to move forward to the summer retreat. And my understanding is that Michael Blade has investigated that, and we have no past practice of doing this. So I am very open to either option. We certainly are governed by state law. Whether or not we sign an affirmation, we still are governed by state law. So that, that's clear and simple. And so open to conversation. Angela.
Thank you. I'm the board member who was asking questions about this policy. I recall the conversation as perhaps interested in some history, but not interested necessarily in striking that sentence from the policy, although it sounds like there might be an appetite for that. I personally like that sentence. I know that we didn't do it in the summer. It's of course still an opportunity this year to sign an affirmation and be not in violation of our policy if we left it as is. I know that there's been no past history. I thought that it was new at the time that we adopted the policy language from OCCA, and it was OCCA's recommendation. I don't see any problem with signing it. I sort of like the idea of having some sort of written confirmation, reaffirmation, sort of reminder, like, to be on good behavior. I recognize that it's not required by law, so it would be above and beyond. But again, I just don't see a problem with that. So anyway, I'm in favor of leaving the policy as is. I thought that the only thing we needed to do with it was to renumber it. So I do think that there is some action needed, regardless of whether we strike the sentence or not. We need to, I think, renumber it to the OCCA number rather than the number we have it in our policies now. It was pretty rambling. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Does anyone else have thoughts about this? Okay, so any type of motion on this? We don't technically need a motion to keep it the same. I can just move us on and we would have changed nothing. Okay.
I move that we.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Angela.
I move that we retain BP 313 as written, but renumber it to OCCA BP 2715.
So that motion would imply that we retain the affirmation language. Michael Blade?
Yeah, just I would say that Trustee Van Kraus's motion was fine, except for it wouldn't be OCCA BP 2017. It would be LCC BP 2017. They are being changed to LCC policies.
Dang it. Thank you, Michael.
So is that?
Can I amend?
Yes, you may. Go ahead.
Move that we retain as written BP 313, but renumber it to LCC BP 2715.
Great, thank you. And do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. And any discussion? Just for clarity, it will contain a statement regarding affirmation, and we would work to bring that to the board at the summer retreat. Mike.
One question I have is and I apparently I'm late coming up with this, but the statement at the bottom, let's see, indicating that there's something else that's still going to be developed. And that just seems weird to me to be part of a policy statement saying we're going to develop something else.
Okay. Is that a friendly amendment to strike that note?
Well, yeah, sure.
Okay, Angela, are you okay with striking that note? I will follow up with Michael Blade. I believe he already has something in the works for us.
I'm comfortable with striking the note, but I think it might be too late for a friendly amendment if we're getting really particular about Roberts.
Okay.
But I think, we don't have to be that particular about it.
Well, we haven't voted yet. We're just discussing it, and I believe we can have a friendly amendment, but I could be wrong. Michael Blade, can you clarify that?
I think Trustee Van Cross is actually right. We'd
Okay.
have to go back and have a formal amendment.
Okay. So we can move forward with this. It's fine. Getting good, Angela, on those Robert's rules. Rosie.
That training.
Just a very minor point of clarification. It states that the board would sign something at the annual organizing meeting. That's the July board meeting, not our summer retreat.
Okay, thank you. That's fine too. Angela?
I also think that we would have to sign something this year and not wait until next summer, because it says annual and we haven't signed anything this year. So we're out of compliance with our policy this year.
Michael Blade, would you like to speak to that?
Since we did pass this amendment amendment, board policy as is, once again, Trustee Van Cross is correct. So you're, like she said, you're getting good. The question really is, yeah, exactly. The question I think I have for the board to maybe discuss quickly is the one I sent to you, Chair Fragalo, was a very short statement saying, we affirm. In corporate America, when you do these affirmations, usually it's a long document going over each and every bullet point and paragraph in the code of ethics. And so I'd like to get some guidance from you. Do you want something just short and sweet saying, I, board member, affirm the code of ethics as set forth in the board policy? Or do you want something longer like you might have if you were on the board of a corporation?
Rosie?
Why are you asking me?
No, you had your hand up. I'm just looking.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I failed to take it down after the last time. And all of a sudden I thought, why does she want me to answer that one?
I will respond. I would be in favor of short and sweet. And I have had it suggested from another board member that serves on additional boards that annually they receive a training, a refresher on these laws that include examples. And I think we could benefit from that. We could have that in a work session, and that could be the work session that I don't know if we need to sign anything in the work session or if we just affirm it or send it out after the work session. But Rosie and I could work out those details. Rosie.
Thanks. Just as a sidebar on this conversation, I don't remember that board members sign a conflict of interest statement annually. Do we do that, Michael?
We do.
Yeah,
I don't do not.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised by that actually. Why don't we combine the two? Affirm our ethics and affirm that we have no conflicts of interest.
Well, because the conflicts of interest is actually something that's governed by state statute, and it is something that is done by a state agency. I do it for the Planning Commission. The City Council does it, And typically it's the local jurisprudence that makes the decision which boards and commissions are responsible for doing that.
That's news to me. You've educated me on that point.
Angela?
I think to Rosie's point, if we sign something affirming this policy, considering bullet point 3, we would sort of cover that because it mentions preventing conflicts of interest and the perception of conflicts of interest. Rosie, would that meet what you're interested in, or are you thinking of something more?
Actually, Angela, what I'm accustomed to signing for Oregon Social Learning Center is far more detailed than this.
It's something you receive from a state agency that you actually attest to not receiving any types. You're talking about the one that relates to money, Rosie?
Yeah, I think in the case of Oregon Social Learning Center, it's a function of being such a wholly grant-funded organization. There are so many different sources of funding that board members are required to testify and sign for the fact that neither they nor family members have any conflicts.
Mike?
You're right, Lisa. This is where it's done. It's required by law. It has to file with the State Ethics Commission. I know on the sub board I do it, but there are other boards that I've been on where I haven't been required to do it. I'm comfortable with leaving that the point that Angela referred to, I guess, was number 3, as covering us with regard to our expectation for conflict of interest. And I don't think we should be asking the State Ethics Commission to include us into something that we're not currently included in.
Great. So yes, it's right there in our board policy. And I think we can, with Michael Blade's help, develop a short and sweet affirmation and move that forward. So we do have a motion on the table that we could take a vote on. Rosie, did you have one more thing, or is that okay? So I'm gonna have us, Steve.
I've lost track. Before we take the vote, can we just get a clear, just short, sweet summary of where we're at?
I usually repeat it. Yep, gonna do that for you right now. So Angela, would you like to repeat your motion?
Well, Steve asked for something clear, so I'm not sure if I'm the best candidate, but I will make an attempt. I move that we retain BP 313 as written and update the number to be LCC BP 2715.
Great, thank you. And that motion would retain the language that includes the affirmation, which we approved at a previous board meeting. Donna, can we call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Yes.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Yes.
Austin Fullnagy,
Yes.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragala.
Aye, that motion carries. So we have retained the original policy. Thank you, everybody. And Michael, thanks for your nimbleness on that. So let's go ahead and move on to our next action item, which is to approve the advisory committee membership for the presidential recruitment and selection. Deborah, did you want to address that?
Sure, yeah, I can introduce these two things. So you might have seen that yesterday we actually updated the Presidential Search Advisory Committee member list. And so all of the positions are now listed with a person who's recommended for appointment, except for the two the two at the very bottom, which are at-large positions that are proposed to be added, and I'll let our ad hoc committee speak about that. And then the other document that you'll see in board docs is a presidential search engagement plan. So we're about to enter into the part of the search, the first part of the search that is pretty exciting, and that we get to engage with community members and our internal college community and ask what they really would like to see in the presidential profile, which is the first sort of document and the guiding description that leads us through the search. And so those two documents have been provided for you, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
And I would like to go ahead and address the addition of the two positions. Deborah, would you mind sharing that
Sure.
on the screen? Thank you. And while she does that, I'll talk a little bit about it. So I believe at our last meeting, the ad hoc committee discussed with you our commitment to having a diverse advisory committee. And at this time, we do feel that in terms of geographic representation, balancing gender, and also some other items in terms of constituents, that we've done a fairly good job with, while also trying to keep it small. But one thing that we had hoped to address in the process was to have a diverse advisory committee in terms of cultural and racial representation. We didn't feel that we were able to get to that goal. And so we would like to add two positions of at-large communities of color, and we want to continue to work to add a more diverse representation culturally and racially. But we do have a group here that we would like to approve tonight to continue moving us forward in this process. So any questions or motions are accepted. Austin.
I make a motion to approve the membership appointments to the LCC Presidential Search Advisory Committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved by Austin, seconded by Rosie. Is there any additional conversation about that motion? Looking for a hand. Austin, did you want to speak to your motion?
No, I really appreciate the board's effort to create a diverse search committee, and also the efforts even around geographical representation as well. Those efforts are greatly appreciated. And yeah, thank you for all the community members for your service. This is a great service to our college and the community.
Thank you. Holly?
Thank you, Chair Fragala. I'm really happy to see that we have added other folks who represent different regions. I do have a question for the two line items on the bottom that say at-large communities of color, and if we have an ETA on when we might know about the selection of those folks.
We are actively working on it now, and our intent would be we would have to bring it to the work session for approval and have a special session right before that meeting if we also approve them, or the board could grant the ad hoc committee authority to fill those two positions. Those would be our options. I do believe the latter would allow us to respond more nimbly and to move ahead quickly. So that would be our options. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we have a motion to adopt this current advisory committee membership. And so Donna, could you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Yes.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Yes.
Austin Fullnagy,
Yes.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Yes, thank you. That motion carries. Angela.
Well, did you want to discuss the adding 2 more members this evening? Is that discussion happening now?
So yes, if you would like to discuss that in terms of how we move forward, that is fine. Open to feedback.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate all the effort that has gone into this so far, and I very much respect the perspectives and recommendations of folks on this team. I think that it's important enough that it's worth it to lose a bit of nimbleness for the board to have an approval process. This advisory committee is a really important element of the presidential search. And I think that it matters that the board participate in the decision about membership.
Austin?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in agreement that the board should make that appointment, and yeah. So with that, I do feel that we need to have a say in this. So thank you so much.
Holly?
Thank you. And I do agree with my fellow board members on this issue. And you posed 2 options. And I think that we should at least be allowed in those conversations as a board, and be able to even offer, sorry, the dog, recommendations. So I don't know if this is a space to start discussing that now.
I would say we're not going to get into a conversation, but we are absolutely open to your recommendations and suggestions. Please call me or email them to us. Totally open and appreciate it.
I appreciate that. And then I don't see anyone from the health community. So I'm just curious if that's maybe an important role in this search, considering what we're dealing with right now.
So I did also want to take a moment to, so I am hearing that the board would prefer to approve it. And so we'll move forward in that manner. Thank you for clarifying that. And so if Donna, you could note, we're going to need to do a quick special session prior to the next work session. And yet we are open to hearing feedback from the board at any time about any part of this process. So I also want to bring your attention to the presidential search engagement plan. You're going to notice that there are 5 forums for the internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. And we also have some smaller focus groups for BIPOC employees and students, and then there's an interest in doing them for BIPOC community members as well, to create safe spaces for engagement. I would also like to say that in terms of the focus group, any member of the board is welcome to help support that effort. So if you have a group, like healthcare providers or boards and commissions, if you have a group that you would like to provide the opportunity to give feedback, you are welcome to discuss that option with the ad hoc committee. I have Mike followed by Angela.
Yes, when we talked about this at the last time we discussed the presidential search, I talked about trying to make sure that we had broad representation in the forums. And maybe I didn't elaborate on that enough, but I was thinking that we might want to establish a forum in Cottage Grove, a forum in Florence. We are an important part of those communities. And I was also thinking that we have included the Springfield Chamber on the advisory group, but not the Springfield city government. We've included the Eugene city government, but not the Eugene Chamber. It seems to me that I would be most comfortable if we had a more active and robust outreach, both in Eugene and Springfield and in Florence and Cottage Grove, And that may not need to be in person. We could do that virtually, but I think that the college, I don't think that what we have here adequately represents how important the college is community-wide. And it seems a little bit insular, our current plan.
Deborah, did you want to discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, so I would just mention that, so the forums are one way for folks to give feedback, and that we're planning them all virtual right now, just based on kind of our in-person meeting restrictions right now that we're honoring at the college. But thinking we can definitely add additional focus groups. There's another way that we can make sure that those groups are contacted. And one of them is if there are specific board members or if there are employees at the college who would like to contact them, for example, and just set up a call. I know that President Hamilton did a lot of this when we were doing strategic plan feedback, is just sort of making time for a 15-minute call or conversation with specific groups. I think that we're planning to do this with our LCC Foundation also, just to make sure that everyone gets heard. So the survey consists of 3 questions, and they'll always be the same 3 questions that are asked in the forums, in the focus groups, and in the survey. And so there are multiple ways that we can get responses to those 3 questions, and that we can provide that feedback either via email to our presidential search consultant at ACCT, or we can send the survey with a short message and a request for folks to send it, to fill it out and submit it. So there are other ways that we can do that kind of outreach without having a full kind of scheduled longer forum.
Angela?
Thank you. My comment was on a previous topic, so it feels a little bit out of place, but I wanted to note that I heard 3 board members, myself included, requesting to participate in the appointment of subsequent advisory committee members, but I didn't hear a majority. I don't know if it needs a vote, but I don't know if everybody's comfortable with the minority of the board directing the process.
So I don't know if the ad hoc committee, which constitutes 3 individuals, we're going to take input and direction. So I don't know if I'm fine with that. And would you like to hear from the other members of the ad hoc committee?
Yeah, Angela, I just sort of saw it as the other 4 members giving some feedback to the 3 of us who pulled the membership together of that ad hoc committee. So I did not take an active role in that discussion, was just simply going to respect the will of the 4 of you, and 3 out of the 4 of you, I believe, weighed in. So that seemed adequate to me.
Mike?
Yeah, I don't want to beat on this too hard, but it seems to me that the college is missing an opportunity if we don't actively and very deliberately reach out to organizations like the Eugene Chamber and the Springfield City Council, and whatever, maybe that would include Rotary clubs. And I don't want to just leave that to the randomness of a board member who happens to be connected to one of those groups. I think we should be deliberate about it. So that's just and that's the last I'll say about it, but that's my input.
Rosie?
Well, I think you all know that when we talked about this last time, I shared that we had a much bigger, more elaborate 30+ member search advisory committee 5 years ago, for exactly the reason that Mike is alluding to, which is an anxiety about failing to pull in the perspectives and the wisdom, and just to pay homage to the partners, the myriad partners that the college has throughout the district. This time around, because it's a very different search in many, many respects, the ad hoc committee erred on the side of creating a smaller, more representative search advisory committee. So for example, we wanted someone representing the Chamber of Commerce point of view. And so we opted to invite someone from the Springfield Chamber. We wanted to ensure we had someone who represented the municipal government point of view. And so to balance the Springfield information, we issued an invitation to the city of Eugene. There's no desire, I think, on the part of the ad hoc committee members who are making recommendations to the balance of the board to leave anybody out. And so my question for Mike is, are you wanting this search advisory committee itself to be bigger, or are you wanting a more purposeful outreach to specific constituencies that you don't see in this design here?
Number two, I think the committee's fine.
Okay, well, that's helpful to me to understand better what exactly you're, I mean, there's nothing to preclude us all from organizing an outreach effort that's a little more purposeful, for example, in Florence and Cottage Grove and with municipal governments and so on. I mean, whatever it is we all think. And so Mike, what would help the ad hoc committee is if maybe you would send us an email saying, here are the groups that I am concerned we may be missing the boat with, and we can work with Deborah and others, our hired firm, to determine the best way to make sure that we get their perspectives, and we make sure that we take the appropriate steps to make sure they know we want their perspective.
I just view it as an opportunity for the college, and it would be an opportunity missed.
I couldn't agree more. I agree with you completely.
So 2 points. I have not had the opportunity to fully update the remainder of the ad hoc committee on a lengthy conversation that I had with Jill, our consultant, and she fully intends to do extensive outreach. We fully intend to do extensive outreach. And she talked quite a bit about how when we are engaging the community around the forums and the digital survey, that it won't just be passive advertising. We will actively send information to a broad list of groups and to a broad list of individuals, asking them to come to these forums, and also providing them the link to the survey. So the intent is to actively engage with the community in a variety of ways. The meetings are digital, and so I think that provides access to the different geographical locales, and we will certainly make an effort to get the information out in those areas to different boards and individuals that we engage with on a regular basis. And I think an important thing to remember is that the ad hoc committee is responsible for the process, for creating a process to get us through for recruitment and selection. We still need other board members to help, right? So that means we need you to email us the groups that you think we need to engage with. That means we need you to consider if you will help engage a focus group, right? So this is a participatory sport that we need everybody to help out with. The ad hoc committee is responsible for the process. I have Rosie and then Steve. Thanks, Rosie. Steve.
Hey, Mike, thanks for the comments. I agree. What I heard is that, or my response basically is that we should have a fully developed list of various organizations and groups that operate in Lane County and share it out with the entire board so that they can review and add any that we may have missed. So I think I'm perfectly happy to commit to that. That seems like a reasonable piece of the process. And then once we have a fully developed list, we, Jill and others will reach out to those folks. That I don't think that list could get potentially long. So I don't think we're in a position to commit to conducting, staffed or facilitated sessions with each and every one of them. But each and every one of those groups would at a minimum, right, be offered the opportunity to attend sort of community sessions or to complete the digital survey. And as Deborah was saying, it's the same 3 questions, regardless of which forum you choose to participate in. But thanks for the feedback, because I agree, there's no reason not to take the opportunity to reach out to all the different kinds of partners that the LCC has developed over the years and make them feel included.
Any other questions or comments about the process so far? Hopefully, we'll have another update for you at the work session. Please do email us your suggestions and ideas. They really help. This is going to start to move pretty quickly because our dates and times for the forums are going to be in early October. The advisory committee will meet for the first time, I believe, on October 16th. So that will be to work on the presidential profile, and we need to have information to Jill prior to that so that she can put a draft together. Deborah? You want to go ahead and unmute yourself? There you go.
I just also wanted to mention that I know that it is a short window of time. And part of that is because we want to have maximum engagement on campus. So we're waiting for folks to be back on campus, and then also wanting to start the search committee off as soon as possible to get the process started. And so there's just this sort of short window there, which is October 6th through 12th. However, the form is live now. So we can start with engagement and start sharing that form and start kind of, if the hope is to do sort of a road show and have people take this to different groups, which is something we can absolutely help figure out, we can start that right away. That's not a problem because we can start gathering feedback. We just have to complete it by the 12th so that there's time for it to be put together into a draft for the search committee to take a first look at.
Thanks, Deborah. Anything else on this topic? Okay, I would like to suggest that we take a 5-minute break, get a little bit of a body break, and we will reconvene at 7:33. Thank you for that timer. So our next action item is the Advanced Technology Hub Architecture Engineer. And we've got Thomas Goodhue, our Capital Construction Manager, to talk with us about this.
Thank you, Chair Fragala. Just a couple of things. You have the formal packet, but I want to stress the importance of this project. It's about a quarter of our bond dollars are allocated to this project to develop this advanced technology hub. So it's really a unique project. Building 12 is the largest building on campus that really had nothing done to it since it was originally built in the 70s. Creating this advanced technology hub is a really exciting thing. I want to thank Grant Matthews, who's also here, in taking the initiative as we started talking about this renovation to really look at renovating not only the building, but how they deliver apprenticeship programs in these advanced technology trainings. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is teaming with that academic side with the architecture side so we make sure this new project will truly address the future of our needs here. So with that, I'm open it to questions and see what you have to say.
Austin?
First off, great to see you again, Tom. The points that were given to the companies in regards to the interview points, because so there's the proposal points and the interview points.
Yep.
So obviously there's some differences between the different firms with the proposal points. What's what exactly goes into the interview points?
Very similar types of qualifications. They're probably, so we have the same basic rules by the state of what we can grade on. The one difference is I think we posed some questions that came up based on some of the things in the proposals. So there's some aspects about it that were more specific to our particular project, how they would approach that, getting to know their staff. There are also some questions about how, some very direct questions about how they would help with our CBA agreement, and how they were going to really try to design a project that could use local funds as well as engage the local community, which one of the great things about the Hanbury Eddy team was that they had some experience with local industries or Oregon industries as a whole, doing advanced technology centers from the industry side, the side that they have looked at for, developing their internal think tanks, kind of. And they had some really interesting ideas of how they could bring that forward. Had done some other work with other colleges, worked with the consultant that Grant Matthews has been working with on the academic side on a couple of other colleges. So they had a good rapport with them and had some really interesting ideas of how they could try and bring that to our campus.
Perfect. Could I just ask a brief follow-up question?
Sure.
Yeah, so the CBA question, was that a considerable amount of the points given, or was it just one of many questions?
It was one of many questions. I think I don't have the exact numbers between, but it was probably in the 20% range, maybe plus or minus.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Steve?
I move to approve.
Is there a second? Okay, so moved by Steve and seconded by Holly. And the motion is to approve the recommendation for the Advanced Technology Hub Architecture and Engineer to go to the recommended recipient, which, let me see if I can quickly find that name. It is Hanbury Eddy Architects. So I see we have some conversation before we will take that vote. starting with Rosie, followed by Angela.
Thank you. I'm prepared to support the motion. I do want to express my growing concern about Lane Community College recently fairly consistently awarding substantial contracts to non-Lane County taxpayers. I may come across as fairly provincial in this point of view, but I'm really concerned, and I'm absolutely satisfied that Henneberry et al. Are eminently qualified. But I think the college is capable of making its needs known to one of two local contractors. And I continue to be disappointed to see these very, very substantial investments go to businesses outside of Lane County. If I'm somehow wrong-headed about this, I'm more than happy to hear from my colleagues about that. But we asked for money from Lane County-based taxpayers, and they gave it to us in a record amount. And for us to then turn around and spend it outside of Lane County is troubling to me.
Angela, followed by Austin.
Thank you. I have some questions still about the scoring, but I don't think Steve got to talk to his motion. I don't know if that's something I want to.
I'll go back to that. Okay, Steve, you want to talk to your motion?
Nope. I think the motion is pretty clear. I'm ready to move forward with the discussion.
Okay, Angela.
So I guess I'm still confused about the scoring. So the totals were added to the top three. And I guess it doesn't matter for the two that weren't selected, although I would like to echo Rosie's concerns. But how does Pivot, I keep wondering about Pivot. How are they third if they got 4 more points than Rowell? I mean, again, it doesn't matter if they're not being selected, but I don't think I understand the scoring. Is it not most points wins?
High points win, and I think there was a typo that was corrected, and I'm not sure which packet that got uploaded. There was some strange confusion going on, and I apologize for that.
So are we unclear about what the actual scores are?
The scores are correct in the packet. The total, Pivot OPSIS was 906. They are our second. And Roll Brokaw is 902 for a total for our third placed finisher. Henneberry Eddy was 915. So hopefully that's the right one that's the one I found on the board packet today, and that is the correct version.
Austin?
Tom, you mentioned that the company out of Portland, they do a good job. Please correct me if I misquote you on this. They do a good job of working with contractors, like communicating with contractors, have worked with local contractors and so forth. Is that correct? Or and also they're out of Portland, right? Not out of Lane County.
The Henneberry Eddy is based out of Portland. Several of their prime subcontractors, the landscape architect, civil engineer, are both Eugene-based firms. Some of their smaller consultants are also the Valley and Lane County area. So, Steve?
I just wanted to respond to Rosie's concerns. I hear them, and I want to kind of ask the question really that Tom hopefully can answer, that while they may, if we move to approve, we will be awarding ultimately a significant amount of money to a Portland-based contractor. We're not actually doing that tonight, right? We're awarding them a relatively small amount of money on the hope that things work out. And and a much larger contract follows a few months from now. But my understanding is that a significant amount of the money, the actual dollars that is awarded through that contract, will be reinvested in Lane County subcontractors. Can you just confirm? Is that true, Tom?
That is the intent. Like I say, the civil and, on this direct contract, the civil and landscape architecture contracts are, I'm going to say, about 15-20% of directly of this particular contract. It's usually, it may be a little bit more on that. It has a pretty significant site work component to it. And then, the bulk of our, 20 million in construction is, we'll go through the CMGC that we will talk about, hoping to get your approval to move forward with next month. But again, part of what Erintley was able to do is they can work with understanding the local farms, the local trades, and how do we get, make sure the design can support those local industries, utilizing the locally manufactured wood, timber, or other products that are supplied locally. So that's a lot of what we're trying to do.
Well, I'll just follow up then. So that's my understanding and my expectation as well, right? That we are asking them to honor the spirit of the CBA, which includes a heavy focus on awarding as many of those dollars back to Lane County qualified Lane County subcontractors. So I guess we would expect to see that in the follow-up contracts and discussions some period of time from now, if and when, we award this right now. The other point, I guess I just wanted to make, broadly, that it sounds to me that the three top scorers did, that you adapted your sort of perception of those three once you got to the interview stage. And when the Portland-based firm was able to talk about its past experience working on similar building types, that really started to factor in heavy towards the ultimate, the final scoring, which had them come out on top. And that resonates with me, is the point I want to make. That past experience is worth a lot. At the end of the day, that is going hopefully to to get us a building that will stand the test of time.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we have a motion here to approve the recommendation of Henneberry Eddy Architects for the design of the Advanced Technology Building 12 Hub. I'm going to have Donna call the roll on that.
Holly Johnson,
Yes.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Yes.
Austin Fullnagy,
Yes.
Rosie Pryor,
Yes.
Lisa Fragola.
Yes, so that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. So that moves us from our action items to our discussion items. And the first one we have is with Tom Goodhue again, and that is an update on the health professions CMGC process that is occurring. And we're not being asked to approve anything for this evening. It's more of an update. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes, thank you again, Chair Fragola. This again, an important project with the bond, and thought it was appropriate to come before the board because this will be, in the end, close to a $14 million contract. Based on our CMGC process, we are currently underway with a pre-construction contract that is about $61,000 for the Fortis construction to help us make sure constructability, and again, work with us to try and find local contractors or subcontractors, local trades, make sure we can do that, as well as guarantee that we're coming in as close in our price range so that we can make design decisions along the way that are very much in support of our financial goals for this project. So I wanted to make you aware. Our current schedule has our guaranteed maximum price, which is the big construction value contract. That will be coming probably in the March, April timeframe. And I just wanted to let you know that we are working with this team, and so we don't come at a later date and you're surprised or anything like that. I do hope to bring, as we proceed with design, bring more updates to your work sessions and things like that, that we can show you what we're hoping to do as well. So thank you for your time.
Are there any questions or comments about this update? Austin?
Did we already decide a location of where we're building this?
Right. Great question. We are looking at our preferred site is on the north side of Building 6, which is the Performing Arts Center, kind of tucked between Building 6, Building 5, the gymnasium, and the sports fields. Looking at that, and as part of the scope of work, we'll be creating a new primary entry from that north side of campus, which was one of the master plan goals as well. So that'll help support that. And looking at that, we looked at a couple of other sites, but this one seemed to provide the most benefit for the campus as a whole, as well as provide a good location for the program's proximity to their existing buildings.
Gotcha. And most of that's going to be built over like paved parking lot, right?
It's actually, we will end up relocating some of the grounds in an old building that's got some performing arts storage that is in severe need of help, we'll say. So it's taking down some buildings that aren't really in the greatest shape and addressing some deferred maintenance that way as well. So, and then adjusting a fire lane. So it actually does not take over any parking. So that was one of the big advantages of this site, that with bringing back the dental clinic, we anticipate a higher parking demand, and we didn't want to take away parking was one of the priorities.
Great, thank you.
Steve?
This is a more general question, Tom, but it applies to the project we're talking about now as well as the previous one. Do we have any, institutional policy that guides new construction and major renovations regarding sustainability? So for example, sorry, I just had a distraction on my screen. So for example, we could have a LEED certification policy or some kind of policy that requires us to exceed state energy code by some percent. There's other things we could do as well. How, what do we have, or what do you use to guide the design work?
Thanks. I love that question. We have contractually, we have a LEED silver requirement on our capital projects. Personally, I'll be disappointed if that's all we get. And I express that to the design teams when we get into our sustainability charrettes. We have a number of other policies that we look at, and we ask both the general contractors and designers to work towards. There is the state mandate. For each project, we try and set what is known as a EUI, the Energy Utilization Index. And we do that project by project because it varies depending on the type. But we try and set that as an aggressive goal, as one of our energy goals. Certainly all LED lights, try and do that. Waste reduction is requested of all the general contractors so that we're diverting, even in a demolition scenario, to divert as much of that waste and recycle it as much as possible. Is that the kind of thing you're looking for?
Yeah, exactly. But I always feel a little more comfortable when there's actual policy guidance requiring it, as opposed to, stretch goals or whatever it is that might get value engineered out.
There are some very specific, there's a a policy statement that I don't have at my tips, but we rebuilt, and I think it's actually, the facilities committee reworked it last year, and I believe it did not quite get to the entire approval process before the academic break over the summer. So it'll be coming forward here in with new, but it does specify that LEED silver as a policy, as well as some other waste diversion, other core sustainability, and in support of our STARS measures and things like that.
Last question then, you designed to the LEED standard, or does that policy require you to see it through to certification?
So strongly suggest certification, or ask for certification where possible. There are certain projects, and I'll bring up, we have a project at Florence, but due to the nature of the scope, it would be tough to qualify through all the LEED points because of the nature of the renovation only focuses on certain areas. But we're using the LEED checklist as a design guideline there. And, but certainly it will be both the Health Professions Building and the Building 12 Advanced Technology Center will be a LEED certified building. So we'll be applying for that with the USGBC.
I'm going to sleep better tonight, Tom. Thank you.
Glad I could help.
I have myself in the queue. So Tom, this is an update, but I do see in the summary of findings that the committee is recommending Fortis construction. Is that correct?
Correct.
But I did not see included in the packet a summary of the scores. I think I'm noticing that what we have in the health professions section is we got the Building 12 score sheet a second time.
Yeah, and it got uploaded to the wrong spot.
Yeah, so if we could maybe get those sent out, that would be great. I am really going to fall squarely in the camp with Rosie that, having been somebody that was very out front on the bond campaign and made commitments to the community that these dollars would be invested in Lane County, that I would like some understanding of how that is occurring when we are hiring Portland contractors. Fortis is another Portland contractor, correct?
Correct.
And so I would really, when we come back with this approval process, I'd really like an understanding of how are these dollars being invested locally when we're hiring a Portland contractor. I think I got a little bit of an image of that tonight. I think there's also where the workers are being employed from. So that would be very helpful to me. And I also believe that we have more flexibility. I mean, the way it's been explained to me, we have more flexibility in the use of the CMGC approach. And so it makes me wonder why we are not able to then leverage that flexibility. And that was how it was explained to me in order to hire local contractors.
Okay, I'll work with the purchasing group to get the scores, as well as be sure that when we come forward with the GMP, we have that full description to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. Okay, I'm going to move us on to our public safety report. And we, okay, sorry, I keep moving I'm on two computers. I keep touching the wrong one to get me to where I would like to be. So we have our Director of Public Safety and Emergency, Lisa Rupp, who is with us to discuss this public safety report. And just for new members to the board, this is something that at a summer retreat 2 years ago, we asked that the board have an annual report from public safety. And so this is part of something that we've institutionalized. Do we have Lisa here?
Yes.
Great, there you are. Sorry, I didn't find you on the screen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening, President Hamilton, Provost Gerald, and the board. Thank you for having me here tonight to talk about the Public Safety Board report. I'm happy to answer any questions any of you might have of me.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Austin.
Hi there. First off, thank you so much. So currently, so before COVID-19, we kind of had a pandemic of school shootings and safety concerns around school shootings and so forth. And I wanted to kind of ask, what have been some precautions? I know that we've been off campus for quite a bit of time now. During that time period, have we done any upgrades to safety precautions? Is there any plans for safety precautions or things to mitigate an active shooter type of situation in our buildings and so forth? And I also know that we also have some plans with some of the dollars from the bond to increase safety and so forth. Just wanted to kind of hear your perspective on that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. Public safety staff often trains regularly on policy and procedures regarding response to violent act or active shooter. Public safety also provides active shooter, violent actor, workplace violence trainings to any departments that request it. We work with our local law enforcement by conducting annual drills. That just gets local law enforcement familiar with our campus, and they get to practice responding to an active shooter. We have lockdown procedures in place. Also, we have the lane alert notification system, the mass notification system on the center building. Yeah, that's about it for that.
Any other questions for Lisa? Mike?
Hi, Mike.
Yes, I've wondered for a while what our policy is on traffic stops. I know that that's a very dangerous thing for police officers as well as safety officers. And it isn't, I imagine it, with COVID, it would be very different than what it would be during normal times, but it's unclear to me what our policy is.
That's a really good question. One of the things that changed with Kaylee's law was taking away access to the law enforcement data system, which would allow officers to safely conduct traffic stops. Now officers, they don't necessarily do a traffic stop. They'll stop and talk to somebody if they're driving the wrong way, driving erratically. And they mainly do that for the protection of the public, our students that generally walk to and from their cars to the campus. And we also have the childcare, so they generally walk students or the children on field trips, I guess. So they really only do traffic stops when there's safety issues involved. And they only do that during daytime hours when there's lots of stuff going on and it's generally safer. There's no local law enforcement nearby to do such traffic stops to keep our community safe. So that largely has always fallen on officers' shoulders. And most of them are law enforcement trained, and they go through training through the Lane County Sheriff's Academy. And that's very extensive in officer safety. They do traffic stops and defensive tactics, and they're really big on keeping themselves safe. And that's something that I also promote. And I know you had a question before about that, Board Member Eister, and we spoke briefly about it, and that was when we were allowed to do traffic stops. And for me, it's not as safe for them to do that. So I've asked them to stop unless it's necessary.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Holly?
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for such a
Hi,
thorough.
Holly.
Can you all hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. I got to the bottom of the report, and I'm happy to see that Kind of Gary did some input on this report. But that second to the last paragraph, over the past year, we've had 3,000 calls, and that'd be just what's the point of pointing out that it was people of color? I don't know why I'm
That's what was asked of me, Holly. Yeah, I was asked to provide that information.
Okay.
So, Holly, I'm happy to clarify on that. So, as part of the Black Lives Matter resolution that the board passed, and in some conversations that the board had, we wanted to try to be aware of how our public safety officers were engaging with communities of color. And so we asked for some type of reporting about how that engagement was occurring. I think we want to be clear about whether or not those communities overrepresent the types of engagement that could potentially be occurring in any particular fashion, right? Meaning that, we all know that, for example, with traffic stops in our communities, Black men and Black people end up getting stopped by far more frequently, right? And so we wanted to be informed about whether or not this was happening, some type of incident was happening in a disproportionate manner to our college population. And we also wanted to ensure that the types of responses that were occurring were appropriate within the context. And so it was an attempt to inform ourselves and make sure that our public safety was being conducted in a prudent and socially conscious manner. And I think we're still trying to figure out one of the best ways to approach how to present that information to the board.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I don't see BLM in there anywhere. So when I read that, I was pretty excited. Thanks for that clarification.
Holly, if you have any feedback about how we can do it better, definitely let me know, okay? Austin.
Really quick, in regards to when we do eventually get back on campus, more than likely there would be a mask mandate. In your current, how has enforcing the mask mandate been? I see that you have extra masks that you give out to individuals that might not have a mask and so forth. Has there been any confrontation, or has it been more of like, oh, I didn't have a mask, thank you for the mask, I'll comply type of thing?
The latter. We generally, it's all about educating the students and the public, and staff members pretty much know, but we always approach situations with education, and I mean that generally that's I think officers having an approachable disposition and a friendly demeanor is what I prefer, and we're all about educating members of our community.
Excellent. Thank you for the work that you and your fellow officers do. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I'm not seeing any additional hands. Lisa, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm going to move on to the fall opening update, and we will hear from Paul Gerald, our provost. I did want to turn it over first to Dr. Hamilton and see if there was anything that you wanted to say. Marge, I think you gave a pretty good sense in your president's report.
Yeah, I think Paul will focus more on instruction, but I think the board needed to hear the strategies that we're doing so that you could feel better that we are doing everything that has been possible to do, and we have a lot more to do for sure. So Paul, I think, is going to focus on instruction and where we are and what steps he's taken to really ensure more safety in the classrooms and students on their way to classrooms. Paul?
Sure. Thank you, President Hamilton, Chair Fragola, members of the board. Yeah, I wanted to provide, thank you for the opportunity to provide a report, an update on where we are for fall opening. As you all are aware, these conditions change readily, and we're in a very different place currently than we were a month ago. Just to kind of preface this, I wanted to mention briefly about our enrollments to get a sense of where we are with enrollment. We are still tracking down. We're currently down about 13%. That's a comparable number to what we see from other community colleges in the state. One thing that's a little bit different that we're starting to see now is that while our CTE areas are still showing significant decline, some of them in the neighborhood of 50% or so, we're starting to see significant declines in some of the general education areas where we had not seen them before. So I think we're starting to see this, this continuation of the pandemic and people's just, unwillingness, I guess, to really engage in education. When we look at where we see those declines, and I think this is telling in that the pandemic is just ongoing and really wearing folks out, is that we have about a 15% decline in continuing students. So these are students that were with us in the spring that should still be with us because they haven't finished an award or a degree. So they're postponing their education to some extent, and we're down about 13% relative to last fall in new students. So these are students that would be, for the most part for us, never have been enrolled with Lane before. And this is probably our typical freshman class that would come out of high school. So we're still seeing the effects of the pandemic on enrollments. One sort of bright side in enrollments is that embassies are starting to open back up. Our international program is picking back up. We're welcoming 80 new international students this fall. And in part, because of that, I think our Titan Court is at full capacity. So right now we're at the point where it's challenging. We use Titan Court as a recruiting tool for our international program to create that community for our students, and we're at our limits there for that. So that's good news there. As I had mentioned before, when we entered into the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, we were typically about 25% of our courses tended to be online or remote. During the peak of the pandemic, or I guess I should say when the governor's executive order pretty much shut down the college, we ended up being about 90% online and remote, right? And about only 10% in person. And those were in really critical areas like health professions and a couple CTE programs, but mostly health professions. As we worked our way through the pandemic and tried to provide safely more in-person instruction, we reached a point last spring, I think, where we were probably 75 to 80% remote, and we had about 20 to 25% in-person instruction. And again, most of that was in areas where there was need for more hands-on, CTE, lab courses in arts and sciences, places where students just, need that kind of interaction. As you were aware, our original plans, as Dr. Hamilton mentioned in her opening remarks, was that we wanted to have more significant in-person instruction this fall. We were going to use fall as our term to kind of ease back into in-person activities. And we had scheduled about 50% online and about 50% in person was kind of the balance we were shooting for. And we were pretty close to that. But then as the Delta variant surged and we heard concerns about having large amounts of individuals on campus, we decided to pull back some on in-person instruction. Over the past 2 weeks, we made this decision and move some of that instruction and services more to a remote environment where possible, at least through the middle of October, where models had projected that the surge would not be over, but we would be back to sort of almost summer levels of infection rates. To get a sense of what that did or how we managed that, and we're still in the middle of actively doing that, as you can imagine, it takes a lot of time. it resulted in much reduced in-person offerings for students. We, over the past week, have moved about 250 sections from some in-person component. They might not have been fully in-person, but they had some in-person component to fully online or remote. That's probably about 250 sections is probably about 30% or so of all of our offerings. I mean, it's a significant amount, 25%, 30% of our offerings. For many in-person classes where we wanted to retain some in-person instruction where that was necessary, we have reduced amount of in-person instruction at the start of the term to just that level that's kind of necessary to move the courses along. And we're trying to load, to the extent we can, the in-person instruction toward the end of the term where we hope conditions will be better. To give you a sense, we're still in transition with these courses, but these numbers were accurate as of this morning. We're currently right now, we've gone from we were pre this kind of change, about 50% online and remote. Now we're looking at about 70% or so, with about 30% in person. So I'm anticipating that when the dust settles and we've got all of this moved, that we're going to be similar to the levels that we had probably in the spring. And again, much of that in-person instruction is going to be in those hands-on areas, lab classes in the arts and sciences, most of our CTE programs, health professions, and things like that are where we're going to have most of those hours. Some good news, I mean, we have been, in gearing up for the return to campus in the fall and trying to provide for more student support and services. We have worked on staffing critical positions that had been open during the time when we were not significantly in person. Just to give you a sense of hiring, just since May, we've hired 14 classified individuals, 13 faculty, 4 managers. Most of these are replacement positions. Some of them are new positions, depending upon where the needs were at that time. We're currently starting on Friday and Monday. We'll have faculty connections, which is our sort of new faculty orientation. We will have approximately 20 new full-time and part-time faculty that have been hired over the past couple of years participate in these activities. They're paired with mentors that last with them throughout the year, and there are different activities they do to get to know the college. Marge and I will be there to have a Q&A with them, just so that they can get a sense of Lane and the leadership at Lane. We do have some in-service activities planned. You all have probably gotten some invitations to those. Tuesday morning, there is an all faculty in-service. The topic is very appropriate. It's caring for ourselves and caring for others is the topic. So most of the workshops and professional development are centered around that. There's a keynote speaker that will be speaking. The title is Bearing Witness as an Act of Love, Resistance, and Healing. So really focusing on trying to provide a sense of healing, because that's clearly needed these days. We'll also have an all-employee in-service Thursday morning. The focus there is moving forward together, and a lot of the programming that we have there is centered around accreditation, preparation for the accreditation site visit that's coming up towards the end of October. We had a significant amount of welcome activities planned for students the first week of the term, because again of the plan to move things more remotely where we could. Much of that's been converted to virtual engagement activities. We'll have a virtual resource fair. We are still hosting some vaccination clinics. The food pantry will be open one day a week, and we will have some tabling scattered around on campus as well. And then lastly, as you're aware, President Hamilton in her opening remarks indicated for that in-person activity that we do have, the precautions that we have put in place and are continuing to put in place to work to ensure to the best of our capability the health and safety of our campus community. Most of those center around, again, mask wearing, social distancing. In cases where we do have in-person instruction, we have in many cases reduced class sizes to facilitate the social distancing. And facilities has been working really diligently also to make sure that the buildings are ready for folks when they come back in. So that's kind of what we have been working on for fall. Again, things changed real quickly over the past 10 days. So I suspect that at the next board meeting, I'll be able to provide a more complete and accurate information about where we are in terms of enrollments in these different modalities. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody may have as well.
I have Steve in the queue, followed by Austin.
Thanks for the update. My question might best be answered by Marge, but I'll pose it to you, Paul. Can you just clarify? So we have moved to 100% off-site remote instruction. Is it until?
No, that's not true. What we have done is we have moved to remote instruction where possible, right, or where we can, and we have reduced the amount of in-person instruction to minimal levels in the first few weeks of the term to be able to meet the outcomes of the classes. We've never been fully remote, even during the governor's executive order, as I mentioned before. But what we have done is significantly reduced the in-person instruction so that there are far fewer individuals on campus.
Okay,
Marge,
thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Marge, did you also want to reply to that?
I actually have a question before you do.
So Steve, I'll put you back in the queue once we go to Austin. Okay, so we take turns on the questions, but I'm going to go to Marge and see if she has input, and then I'll put you back in the queue if there's no one else.
No, I think it's best to get it directly from Paul since he's working on it literally as we speak. So.
Okay, great. Thanks, Austin. And then if there's no one else for our first round, we'll go back to Steve.
First off, the staff that assist and with the international students, conversations with them and overall the international program that we have here at Lane is rather incredible. I'd love for there to be a presentation to the board so that they could see what I've seen and researched as well, because not only is it a great opportunity for enrollment, but there's also like an incredible just situation where someone's exposed from a different part of the world, and that just adds to the educational experience. So I would love to have a presentation for the board for that. My question in regards to the general studies, is that a population of students that essentially have the 4-year track with their education, meaning that they're going to essentially transfer to a 4-year institution? We've seen a decrease in that student population.
The bulk of the students that pass through our general education core curriculum do tend to be our transfer students, and that's about half of our students. The other half, again, would be in the career technical education side, and there are many programs in the career technical education side that also have required, for example, math and English that they would need to take, or communication studies. It's a smaller amount in that curriculum, so you are typically looking at that transfer student in that general education area.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And for us, Austin, that does tend to be our more traditional age student, at least, that 18 to 22-year-old student out of high school working here before they transfer on to the university or other college.
Great. So we'll go to Steve, and then I'll put myself in the queue.
The question I wanted to, or the thing I wanted to clarify is, and now that you've made it clear, right, I think it's October 24th currently, in any case, when we are hoping to return to sort of the original plan that you all had put in place this summer before the Delta variant really surged locally, right? So that's the situation that we're operating under right now. I hear also that, and we had some testimony earlier this evening from faculty and staff about this, the enforcement policies we have, and we hear also from Marge that the IT system that we're putting online to help verify that folks are vaccinated if they say that they are. All of these things are, coming at you all at a, enormously high speed. And I just want to get clear from you all is, are you able to keep up with the expectations as they were previously laid out by the board, or do you see a need to adjust that, especially given that the vast majority of our students are not going to be on campus for the fall at this point in time.
I don't know. Marge, do you want to handle that one? There's a question of timing, right? Of being able to get the technology pieces in place to do that. And there are others that can speak to that timing piece better than I can, for sure. With regard to the 10/24 date, Steve, we looked at this when we moved some of these courses. We recognize that the student experience and training that's necessary does require some of what we do, about half of what we do, requires some significant hands-on in-person engagement, right? And we did ask to push as much of that as we could later in the term, and that was consistent with what we had done last year as well. Other courses we have moved where they might have been scheduled fully in person. We have moved them fully online for the rest of the term. We didn't say, okay, you're only remote till October 24th. We felt that for a lot of these courses, it made sense to make that move fully for the entire term, so that both the students and the staff could and faculty could plan for those for that term. So it's a kind of a mixed bag at this point. Even having said that, there are, as Marge alluded to in her opening remarks, there are processes that we have in place where individuals can still request, even past that 10/24 date, to work more remotely if possible. So again, really just trying to make sure that we don't have folks here that aren't comfortable being here, and that we're doing the best we can to limit the number of bodies that are on campus.
Marge, I saw you unmute yourself. Did you want to reply also?
Yeah, I think it's very, very evident that we do want to be as rigorous as possible. And I honestly can say that we did not see the level that was needed to do this correctly. And now that we do, and it's been clear since it's the start in July, I have to really applaud the IT folks, because they're on all cylinders right now to get this done and to do it right. And it might be helpful if you hear from Richard about how this is working, because as I mentioned earlier, we keep adding to the list. We hear now boosters are coming, so we want to be tracking that and know how to track that. The attestations, if we're going to verify. And I think, will we have it all perfect by Monday? No, I wish I could tell you different. But Richard, do you have a second? Are you on? I'm looking for you. Yes, ma'am. Can you just update us on how we're going to approach this to take on these additional trackings?
We have two in-house softwares there, and we're looking at both. Now, the challenges is, one, we don't want to disenfranchise anybody, so we need a Spanish-speaking version ASAP. So that was one of our first priorities, along with the expanded influence of adding in the vaccine card, but also adding in the testing tracking for those who maybe have an exemption but need to be tested weekly. We also have the added access of the upcoming booster that would be made available if it becomes a requirement, or even if you just like to add it into your portfolio. Then there is the emailing, the texting of the students, and the constant reminders that will need to be going out, which is a CRM of sorts. So do we have the software that we are already engaged with here in the college? Yes. Are we looking at which avenue to pursue in that? Yes. Even tonight, as we're meeting, I am emailing with the folks, getting the final verifications and validation of which system would better serve us for expediency and the bandwidth with which we have folks in IT to work with. They are on all cylinders, and some have added a few cylinders. And we are working into the night each night, but our target is 10/24 or sooner. The faster we get this chosen, the faster the implementation will be. We have heard from one of our vendors that instead of a 2-week, they can get us going in as little as 1 week. So we are working with that. I am working directly with legal tonight and with our IT engineers. So we are diligently pursuing every avenue to get this up and running with the expanded expectation, so we can stay on cue with what we've talked with on Provost Gerald about being ready at the 10/24 date and being in position for the winter enrollments. And I'm happy to answer any question.
Great, thank you. So I had myself in the queue, and I guess the thing that I've heard, I implied, right? So I just heard Richard say there's a target. Target for what? So I guess what I've understood and heard communicated is that the college will be requiring validation or documentation of vaccination status, and that we are no longer going to provide the personal or philosophical waiver. And so, Richard, when you say the 10/24 target, is that what you're talking about? And also now implementing the documentation of testing, if that's also necessary. So is that what we mean by a 10/24 target?
Yes, ma'am. Fully operational by October 24, if not sooner.
Okay. And so what I'm understanding then when we talk about the implementation is that we would be ready by November 1st, which is the registration for the winter term, in order to be able to move forward without kind of the messiness of people being able to register before we've implemented a system.
That
Paul? Oh, go ahead, Richard, and then we'll go to Paul.
That is my understanding and the charge we're working with.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Our scheduled development for winter takes place. Well, actually, we're currently doing it right now, but it becomes visible right around 10/24 or so for students. And currently right now, the registration dates are November 1st for special populations. Our veterans start off registration and other special groups. So that's when we would need to have this implemented by, to prevent anyone from being able to register without being compliant.
Steve?
Yep, this is the issue I was hoping to get to. I feel like, over the last handful of weeks, there's been, there's been a moving target, and it seemed like there's some value in clarifying precisely what the expectations from the board are, not only with regard to, vaccination status and expectations around, proving that and who gets an exemption and who doesn't. It seems like that's reasonably clear, but the date by which all of that would have to be uploaded into the system so that the institution could take enforcement action if and when it wants to. And I, based on what we're hearing now and what I was prepared to propose, is October 24th. Because at this point in time, that's the date at which we expect potentially a larger number of students to return to campus. That makes sense to me. I recognize it's been a little messy to get to this point, but there's some value in clarifying that going forward.
See shaking of heads.
Yes, that was the goal. That is absolutely the goal.
Great. So I mean, we are in a discussion item section of this agenda. I did ask for adoption with flexibility. And so does that provide enough direction to you, Dr. Hamilton, as far as what the board's expectations are, that, we recognize the hard work that is being done by everybody at the college, and that we're in the process of implementing this requirement for a vaccination, and we have a target date, it sounds like, of October 24th, and clearly that things will be implemented and begin to be enforced by November 1st for the beginning of winter registration.
Yes, and Richard, that's deliverable, from what I'm understanding.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Austin?
Just a brief request in the deliverables, just communication with staff, I think would be really beneficial about this and about the goals, about the objectives and so forth. I think that would be very valuable in the collaboration of everyone. So, and again, thank you for everyone for their hard work on this.
Okay. So, Steve.
Just very briefly, Marge, do you need some kind of a motion from the board, or has this discussion, sort of, and the minutes that'll follow from it, sort of clearly lay out for you and for faculty, staff, students, everybody, what the expectations are going forward?
I'm comfortable as long as the message was loud and clear that you all understand that the steps are being taken to get us there, and the 24th is the deliverable. Then I think we'll be okay. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else in the queue? Steve? Okay, thank you. I'm going to move us on to our new queue self-study findings, and we have Provost Jarrell, and Richard is going to give us some more information about that. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, and good evening. And we'll switch gears for a minute and talk about running on 8 cylinders plus. Everybody is, and we're getting ready for our site visit coming up in October. I'm going to share my screen quickly and then transition to Paul. There we go. Hopefully there. As we briefly went over in the board meeting, we're in the year 7 of a 7-year cycle. For those who weren't able to attend, we started 7 years ago. We're here at the critical point, and this is where we have the year 7 report. The year 7 report includes a site visit, which will happen virtually this year. That has been confirmed, and we will also be represented by members from the board, faculty, staff, students, management, or when I mean staff, I mean classified personnel. So all of the stakeholders, everybody will have the opportunity to be represented during that site visit. We are already in communication with the chair of the committee, and they have received our 7-year submission. We have brought out areas of interest to them that they may want to look at, and that's where we're going to begin our discussion this evening. Earlier in the process, we provided a heat map of sorts and a magic quadrant of concerns that we self-identified. We were able to de-escalate many of them. There, as you can see, the cash flow, which was a priority, the governance and communication, organizational changes. Some of those were addressed in the year 6 report. They were extremely pleased with our responses. They gave us a few follow-up informal requests, which we added as an addendum in the year 7 submission. So we are in good shape to de-escalate those things. Where we have some challenges, the reason the coronavirus is right here is because they are asking everybody from every college, how are you managing the moving target with the pandemic based on your enrollment and academic delivery? Paul and his team are going to address that in a minute about learning assessment outcomes. And I believe AVP Mindy Dew will address that in the enrollment management part just after this with our strategic enrollment management plan. The reason for this remainder right here for the assessment of student learning that we believe is a likelihood for a warning is because not only of the pandemic and the swift change which we've had in our learning environment, but also in our recent implementation of some software to help in our learning assessment outcomes and program review. Had we had another 6 months to continue down that road, I feel that we could have de-escalated it. But in the recent conversations with the chair of the site committee, they are extremely pleased how transparent we are, and they responded very encouraging that they appreciate the effort that we're doing right now to bring this harnessed for this new learning environment that we're all experiencing. With that, that's the rough overview of where we're going with the year 7 institutional effectiveness. I'm happy to answer questions after Paul has a chance to share what they're doing about the learning outcomes and student assessment. So Paul, I'm going to quit sharing and I'm
Sure,
going to turn this over to you.
I'll share my screen as well here. Are you all seeing that okay? I guess yes, I can't see everybody. So, okay, thank you. I'm assuming we're in good shape. Can I get a nod, some thumbs up?
Yes, we see it.
Great. I had my screen hidden. I couldn't really see that. Sorry about that. I have one of my colleagues, Patrick Blaine, is Dean of Curriculum Assessment and Grants Development. He works pretty significantly in this area, and he's going to play a pivotal role for us in correcting some of those issues that Richard had mentioned. And again, I also agree that if we would have had a little bit more time, we would be okay. But I want to try to highlight, I think, what some of the issues are, why we have them, what are some good things that we've done, and what are some good things that we're going to continue to do to try to facilitate moving Lane into a culture of continuous improvement. I want to focus on two things because I do think that these are the two things. Well, these are the two areas that at our 2014 review, we were placed on warning for in 2016. One of them was in program review, academic program review, and or lack of program review, I guess, in that case, and lack of really any systemic assessment of student learning there. I just wanted to kind of point out for those of you just to kind of understand what we mean when we talk about program review and assessment. These are really, here, especially academic program review, which is what I'll focus on, is they really are a culture of inquiry and evidence. Both of them, they rely on the success of continuous improvement relies on faculty engagement in the process, and they're very central to both of these. I just want to point out in assessment, what we're talking about assessment here, we're not really talking about grades. What we're talking about is this iterative process of assessing what are the outcomes for the course when a student leaves this course, what do we want them to leave with, and how are we determining whether they're successful at that? Are they meeting that? Are they exceeding that? Are they falling below that? And we use usually independent artifacts, not really just scores on exams and things, to try to assess that kind of student learning and meeting those outcomes. And we'll chat a little bit more about that in a minute also. As I mentioned, in 2014, we received accreditation sanctions for program review and assessment of student learning. I've listed those there for you. I also provided you with a sort of brief executive summary of the entire year 7 report, and some of this is highlighted in there as well. Also in the year 6 report, there's some follow-up information about that in the year 6 report as well, so you can take a look at that. In 2016, we were moved to warning for these because at that point we hadn't showed that we had made any kind of responses to those initial sanctions. We worked hard. I wasn't here yet, but people worked hard in the intervening years between 2016 and 2018 to make improvement in these areas, and we were taken off warning. But there was still this sense that Lane still had a lot of work to do in this area. So while we've made progress, I still think that there is a significant amount of risk, as Richard mentioned here. I think more so for assessment than program review at this point. Why we have this continued risk, right? Why hasn't this been fixed over a period of 5 years or more? Well, I mean, I think to realize there have been numerous changes in leadership at the institution. In management oversight of this. Just since I've been at Lane, there have been 5 different managers that have had direct oversight of assessment. And so that it's hard to maintain that continuity if you don't have a systemic structure in place already, which we didn't have. That's why we were put on warning, was because we didn't have that systemic structure in place. So this lack of continuity, this lack of consistency in leadership, I think really has contributed to the fact that we just really haven't made the progress we've made that we needed to make. I think there also has been historically, we're trying to correct it, a lack of dedicated resources to these areas, both in personnel and technology. Technology plays a critical role in being able to systematize this work. And so we're really trying to make some efforts there. There's a lack of campus culture around continuous improvement. And again, we've made good gains in the past few years, but there's still not this this uniform acceptance across the board that around continuous improvement and assessment of student learning outcomes. Okay, and I think also there was some siloing that occurred. While these processes are related, they existed pretty separate from each other, and they really do need to be integrated. And again, a lack of organization, central organization, and accountability. We have done a lot to mitigate this recently. I do want to point out that we have had a lot of institutional investment over the past couple of years in trying to write this. We have created an Office of Curriculum and Assessment. We have dedicated personnel. We've hired a dean. We have multiple faculty that we've hired and provided release time to, in addition to classified personnel. And we also have taking advantage of external peer reviews to kind of help us out with this. We have recently, you may remember, the board approved a contract for this solution Watermark. Watermark does have a technology that allows us to collect information on assessment and program review, and also create reporting around that. So this centralization, I think, is going to be really important in moving that forward. We're also working really heavily to integrate assessment and program review, because they are, again, they're distinct, but they are related, because they are all about continual improvement in student learning. And we have participated in NUCU, which is our accrediting agency fellowship, where we had a project that was centered around assessment, again, trying to really move the college forward in assessment to help with the deficiencies that we've had. I don't want to go through this in great detail because you've got it, and I want to save some time for questions, but I do want to just mention a couple of things here, and then I'll let you have some time for questioning. You know, when I look at program review, I think if I ask the question, where is the risk, or why we have the risk, I think is really, now it's not about process now. In fact, I would say our academic program review is a model process, and we actually have had requests from numerous institutions to come talk to us about how we're doing it and how we've built it. We've gotten good comments from NUCU about our process. Where we're hurting right now is the lack of systemic use of that. As you can see there in the slide, we have 73 different programs or fields of study that we need to review on the academic side of the house. And we're only about halfway done with some of those actually being really in year 3 or more of the cycle. The rest of them are just onboarding. We will have all of our programs onboarded and fields of study onboarded by the end of this academic year. So we will have everything in cycle. We will be systemic at that point moving forward. With assessment, I think the risk is really centered around both of those. I think that we didn't have a well-developed process. And we just recently, I would say, have really developed a process that I think is something that's really accessible, that we can systematize. And again, prior to a couple of years ago, we really didn't have, we had an underdeveloped process, and we really didn't have, and still really don't have, significant amounts of systemic use. I will say, though, that we do have a plan in place now that will have all of those areas on an assessment cycle within the next 3 years. So we will be onboarding all of these different programs, and we will be providing the support necessary to be able to provide the professional development around continuous improvement and assessment and facilitate that work. And the other piece that we're really working on is that we're working on really trying to integrate program review, which again, this is one of the things we were cited on, into our budget and planning, systemic budget and planning processes. And that's not just academic program review, but that's program and services review as well across the college, to really tie that to budget development and resource allocation, I think is key, and we have plans in place to do that as well. There are always ongoing needs. It's been difficult in the pandemic, I think, to start things like this, but I'm proud of the work that's been done. As I mentioned, my colleague Patrick has really done a good job at providing some stability to this area and providing some constant direction and support, and I think that's really gone a long way. We do still have, needs to keep this stability present. We do have needs for increased capacity for institutional research and support from IT. We do still need continued support and professional development for our faculty and classified staff that are participating in this process. And again, I think creating that culture and revitalizing that around the benefits of continuous improvement. I think it's come a long way in the past few years. And again, I want to just see us to continue to grow and develop along those lines. And while I do anticipate some sort of sanction in this area, to Richard's point, I think that what we will see is that because we do have a commitment and a plan in place now for ongoing improvements in this area, I think that that will help us, alleviate whatever concerns that are initially posed by the time we have to do a follow-up report a couple years later. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Patrick, I don't know, he can be here to help answer some things as well. If you have any questions about that, happy to facilitate.
Okay, any questions for Paul or Patrick about this? I have a question. I'll go ahead. So Paul, I'm curious what you meant by tying program review to the budget process and financial resources. I heard you mention that we need to support the systematic use of these strategies in the system. And having heard reports on what is involved for faculty and staff to do this effectively, I'm wondering how we support that with time and resources to make sure that it is implemented systematically.
Yeah, certainly. So we have language in the faculty contract with regard to academic program review. We have language in the faculty contract that provides reassigned time for lead faculty to engage in this work. So those discipline-specific faculty to engage in the work. So that's been in place, I think, for about 3 or 4 years now, where we've done that. We provide reassigned time for both in assessment and program review for faculty coordinators and leadership in that area. We just hired a full-time assessment coordinator that's a faculty member who will be starting with us in the fall. Prior to that, the role was shared with curriculum. There just wasn't enough resources to do the work. We also have hired and reallocated, I guess moved some folks around a little bit to provide more administrative support to these processes so that we can, again, keep better track and keep this moving forward. So we do provide a lot of resources both to faculty and program review and also in assessment to do the work. Assessment, a good bit of assessment work, course level assessment work is part of the obligations of a full-time faculty member or part-time faculty member teaching a course, but larger work around assessment, creating the assessment plans and things like that, we provide reassigned time to faculty for that. The other piece about integrating, where you mentioned into the process, you can have, there wasn't until recently, Elaine, a mechanism for resource requests to flow out of program review and to flow into budget development. And I mean both from academic program review and also services, college services and student services program review. So and then you had a budget development process that would occur separately over here. And most of this is centered around really providing opportunities to make requests for resources, both human resources and physical resources, being able to request if something comes out of an implementation plan and program review that they need or are requesting funds for marketing or curriculum development, those now feed into the resource allocation process at the beginning of the year to be able to provide resources. We obviously can't support all of it, so we're still in need, I think, of a good way to prioritize how that goes. We always get more requests for resources than we have the budget to support, and we're currently, I think this will get developed even further. when we develop a 2-year budget cycle. There's plans to look at a 2-year budgeting cycle that again would allow us to integrate the requests that come out of program reviews as inputs into that budget development cycle. And again, still looking at most effective ways to prioritize those dollars.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to move us on to the Strategic Enrollment Management Plan.
Thank you.
And Mindy is going to speak with us about that. And it sounds like it is an important part of our accreditation process. So Mindy, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Fargla, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to this board. Donna, do I have the ability to share my screen? Looks like I do. So I know that you all have this in front of you, but I'm going to walk through a couple of points. First of all, I do want to say a couple of things, and that's that this is a work in progress. We're not finished with it. So this is a moment in time, a point in time. I came to Lane Community College just over 2 years ago, and our old plan has expired. And so we need a new plan. And so we began working on this, and many props to Bliss Newton, who is my project coordinator, for all the work that she has done on this. This has been a collaboration from Student Affairs through instruction with ATC, with everybody in Richard's shop, all across the college, honestly. And in Student Affairs, actually, like I just want to take a moment. We do have some new board members. I want everyone to know what is in Student Affairs so that when it comes up later, you'll know. So we've got enrollment services, recruiting, admissions, we've got financial aid, advising, retention counseling, placement testing, regular testing, Child and Family Development Center, Career Center, student government, student leadership, student standards and conduct, student engagement, including the Multicultural Center, the Gender Equity Center, the Maxwell Student Veterans Center, the Food Pantry, Rainy Day Food Pantry, Center for Accessible Resources, the international programs, which thank you for that shout out. They are at their pre-pandemic levels for enrollment. We have the registrar, trio programs, athletics, and first year experience. So this collaboration was between Student Affairs and many of the other places, hopefully all of the other places on campus. So tonight we're going to talk about what SEM planning is and why we engage in it, a little of the context, and then some of the information that goes on with that. What we won't be talking about, it says nested SEM strategies. We actually have 51 of those strategies, and we only have a few minutes to go over this. And those kind of get into the weeds, but I will mention one or two later on. So what is strategic enrollment management planning? I'm not going to read this again, but what it is using first and foremost our equity lens, because Lane has a very well developed equity lens. How do we be good stewards with the resources that we have? How do we identify what we can and can't control? How do we stay nimble and respond to changing times? How do we prioritize that resources given that we need to accomplish certain things? And I think the other question that I always want to ask is, when someone leaves our institution, is their life better? Is their life better? And keeping the student at the center of what we do is the community college mission. So we do this because we do improve the student experience. And if we do that, then we improve that experience. The students have an easier time getting into the college. They have an easier time staying in the college, and they have an easier time accomplishing their goals and either moving on to other things or finishing and completing here and hopefully getting a better job out of what they've done. So SEM planning does allow the college to focus explicitly on actions and initiatives that affect our students' experience at Lane. So in this one, I'm actually going to, there was a question and I'm asking Richard Plott, who's been an excellent partner in our planning process, to talk about some of the context of the SEM planning. Richard?
Thank you. When we look at some of the context, we looked at the decline enrollments after the Great Recession. There was a huge surge across the country. We're looking at how that has changed, which two things exacerbated some of those declines. One was the pandemic, and the other is the loss of enrollment in high schools, which will continue throughout the latter part of this decade into 2028. But then we'll see a rise in that. But in the near future, that is not going to be as large of an input and retention mechanism as in the past. The stimulus growth money is going to expire, and we are looking at not only the macro, but the regional and the local job growth. As we've been reaching out in the strategic plan, many of the employers have noted the fact for short-term, short-cycled stackable credentials, which can get employees faster to the job market. So we're looking in our program review addressing that, as Paul has brought out. Also, the retiring numbers of the particular career technical are increasing, and the group behind them are not well prepared. So we're working with them to get them to where they need to be so they can go into the marketplace and be ready to work and be effective as employees in the shortest amount of time possible. These are some of the questions that we've had. These are also supported by Burning Glass and MC, which are futurist, and we have the reports in past. We'll be revisiting those. But one of the concerns that MC and Burning Glass shared today in one of their papers was that there is a direct relationship between retention and completion and the availability to go directly to work from your program of study, especially in CTE, and the rate at which you can transfer from 2 to 4 year if you are going to finish a 4-year degree at one of our partners. So Mindy, I'm happy to answer anything, but it's back to you.
Before we take questions, and I know there will be some, we're excited to answer them. Let me finish up our presentation. Okay, so we chose a framework for this called the Lost Momentum Framework. This also mirrors what we're doing in the Guided Pathways program, because we are a Guided Pathways program as well. So you have 4 points, and that's connection, entry, progress, and completion. So we get people in, we get them on the correct path. We make sure, hopefully we're really working hard on getting people through their math and writing in their first year, completing, moving on through with holistic student supports to make sure that any barriers to learning are addressed, and then completion. Have you met the goal that you've set for yourself here? And have we done a good job of helping you get there? The SEM plan is also nested within the strategic plan. The strategic plan is a 5-year plan, so we made this one a 6-year plan so that we don't do both of them in the same year next time. Let's see. So this is where we are. We began the planning phase late last fall, so I think probably in November. And then we have been checking in. We have 6 SEM leaders, Richard, Deborah Butler, Grant Matthews, Jennifer Fry, myself, and Ian Coronado. And we represent 6 areas of the college. And so we've gone out and talked and got information and input from people that are our constituents in these areas. Brought that back, added all of those ideas and helped to frame some objectives and some of our strategies to bring all of this together. And we check in periodically with the cabinet to make sure that we are on the right track. A lot of what we do, I run by both Provost Gerald and Richard Bott. So right now we're in the design stage. And the reason that we would have loved to have finished design phase by now, but we realized that first off, we're in a pandemic and things are taking a little bit longer than we would like. And then second of all, we can't do the design phase, which includes things like how do we want to prioritize and resource some of these strategies? And we need everybody back at work. We can't do that over the summer. And so we need as many people as possible to get input from. And so we're still in that design phase. And we'll keep doing that through the fall with implementation around the first of the year. We do put information periodically in the Lane Weekly. We did hold a public forum to disseminate information on what we're doing, like this is where we are, what is your input, and to gather that input as well. Okay, so we did talk about some FTE goals and target demographics. And then we constructed 6 SEM objectives, which is on another slide, and I'll show you that in a moment. So when we talk about what our enrollment goals are, okay, so we're thinking of this in a couple of different areas. Our first couple of years are about rebuilding. So our target enrollments are 7,500 FTE by the end of 2023. Years 3 and 4 are focused on growth with 8,500 FTE by the end of 2025. And then years 5 and 6, it's a little bit murky right now. So we need to go every year, do an assessment. Where are we? Do we need to change what we're doing? Do we need to refocus in any of these areas? And then these are our demographic service areas that we're focusing on as well. So these are the 6 objectives that we came up with. And like I said, we kind of did a big funnel. So we took as much input as we had, and we did some coding and theming on it, you know, what likes what. And then these 6 objectives emerged from that. So the first one is to make sure that students know and understand the requirements for successful entry, progress, and completion. And we want to use that as number 1 because it's students. We'll leverage our technology to better support and align. We'll optimize the classroom learning experience, integrate holistic student supports, which, by the way, we do a fantastic job of on this campus, and we do it in a bunch of different areas. So really all we need to do is kind of bring that together in the middle. Recapturing our stop-out, dropout populations, and then increase our demographically targeted recruitment efforts and services related to persistence, retention, and completion of underserved student populations, including Latinx, rural, BIPOC, and non-traditional 25 years and older students. And so in the design phase, what kind of activities are we engaging in? So we're thinking about who is responsible for these 51 objectives. No one person is responsible for any one thing. So if you want to think about optimizing technology, we have teams working on a piece of software called EAB. And the student affairs team is working with teams across campus, and then with heavy input and help and a big lift by IT. Thank you all so much, by the way. We're moving that forward. So it isn't just a one person, it's the naming of responsible parties, because we need to work together. We need that big buy-in. How we're going to resource this work, sort of like, and it's almost a triage, like, is this high priority? Is this already in progress? Does this need to be started? And so already in progress and needs to be started go on together. So identification of collaborators, current and future fiscal and human resource allocation. Do we have enough people to do the things that we need to do? KPIs, which are key progress indicators, narratives, and baseline data, a lot of which is provided in collaboration with Richard Plott and his folks. It's nice to have really good, reliable data on hand. So thank you for that. One of the great things that we've had is Tableau, and it has made a huge difference in being able to predict these things. Figuring out our order of implementation and our assessment and reporting calendar. Like I said, we'll be doing annual assessments on this. And then project management and tracking through the project management office. So that's what we're planning. This is our planning stuff. There are a couple of things that I thought you might want to know that we're engaged in now. So this is not comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination, but I wanted to give you some good examples. So with EAB, which is our retention software, we're doing weekly email and texting with our students now. We do a weekly drop report, and our amazing retention counselors call and attempt to reconnect with those students. Hey, did you know that you haven't registered? Is there a way that we can help you? You know, most people really appreciate a person calling them. We have several call campaigns in progress right now. Recruitment staff follow-up. So if you thought about applying, you got some information in there, and then you kind of backed out, someone's going to give you a call. Doing our Kickstart grants, we have an $11 million Kickstart grant from the CARES Act 3. I'm the PI on that one, and just for the student portion. And so we are distributing through the spring of 2022 those funds, and they're intended to go directly to students. And so we actually, I know it says we already passed 250 applications, but boy, that was 2 weeks ago. That's forever ago. We're over 2,000 applications today, over 2,000. We know that money isn't everything, but it makes a difference and it helps. And we're very, very happy to be able to do that. The Bursar's office has implemented balance forgiveness with the institutional portion of the HERF grant. 1,541 students who had a balance with us, that's not student loan debt, but a balance directly with us. $1.5 million of debt was forgiven. And those students can re-register now. They can reconnect, and we are reconnecting with them. And of course, the phone and email campaigns and a vaccine compliance lottery. I've got that on hold for the moment, but we will keep going forward with that. So thank you. And I would be happy to take your questions. Richard is available for questions, and Provost Gerald as well.
Austin?
Thank you so much for this information, and please thank the staff who's working on this and have done the previous SEM plan as well. So previously with our enrollments, we were at in the 1920 enrollment year, were we at 10,500 full-time enrollments? Do I have that number right, or was it less than that?
I think it was just a little bit less than that.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so essentially we've gone from there pre-pandemic to where we are now, and now we're in the rebuilding stages here. And I saw that so how's the STEP program used into helping with enrollments? Because as far as your targeted categories, I see multiple areas where the STEP program could be used to essentially pay for their education and training and so forth for short-term stuff. So is STEP like a targeted population, or is it essentially covers multiple of the targeted population?
It does cover multiple parts of the targeted population. And we are a pilot school for STEP. Thank you for bringing it up. Rosa Lopez is a driving force there. We did just get another institutional grant to help for strengthening institutions. And what we're doing with that, as I think it's in the same plan, is drawing STEP through the entire campus instead of keeping it in the one area. They have hired a STEP coach, and that person does nothing but connect with the students. And what they're doing is they're training different people in different areas, knocking down silos, so that they know to refer. They can say, hey, there's this resource, walk people over. But yes, they do move through multiple areas, a lot more non-traditional, but that doesn't really mean, we would never exclude someone who is a traditional student. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does. Yeah, I have some additional questions, but I'll wait for others to ask.
Are there any other board members who want to put themselves in the queue? Okay, go ahead, Austin, and after your next question, I'll put myself in the queue.
Okay, awesome. So in regards to the rebuilding process, is there kind of like an increase in marketing as part of the rebuilding plan, or and what does that exactly look like? Because I see a regular marketing strategy for a lot of colleges for undergrad and master's degrees. They're using social media, really getting out there with various targeted populations and commercials. So is that in the plans with the rebuilding process, or is that in the kind of growth? Is there more funding necessary for marketing in the rebuilding or in the growth?
Well, that is a really fantastic question, and we haven't gotten that far. Marketing is, and I see you, President Hamilton, give me one moment. Marketing is separate from enrollment management, but they come right in there and they lead. They do a fantastic job. So I guess that's the best I can say about that. President Hamilton, did you want to say something?
Yes, we have another arm of the college working on that, Austin, and Brett's here. He can comment. He has a report for you in your area. But I know I must be watching the right channels. I'm watching our commercials, and I'm on the Facebook, so I'm getting those in the Instagrams. But Brett, go ahead. Maybe you can just update the board on some of the things that we've been doing.
Sure, and I'd be happy to sit down with anyone who wants to dive more in depth on some of this. But especially since the start of the pandemic, a lot of our marketing has gone digital, and this is kind of a trend that we've seen at a lot of higher ed institutions. But when you're in the digital format, you're able to target a lot better than a lot of traditional forms of marketing. And so we'll oftentimes go out for specific populations. Obviously, if you have 2 PhDs, you're probably not going to see a lot of our ads on social media platforms. But if you're just finishing high school, if you don't have a college a diploma, you're likely going to see a lot more of our ads. We do have increased visibility on both cable and network television, as well as a lot of the digital platforms. There's examples in the reports section of your packet. There's both the digital ad sets that we're running, as well as examples of the radio ads, digital radio, television. And so if you click on any of the ads in that summary report, it'll take you to the full version. So if you haven't seen what's running right now, please feel free to explore that. And if you want to dive in, and see when and where on cable we're running, I'm happy to share those reports with you as well.
Paul, did you have something to add?
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that there will be a lot of opportunity. We do some program specific targeted marketing for sure, but I think as we look to look at programs, and just to kind of tie it in with an earlier presentation, I mean, when we build out the Advanced Technology Center and look at the programming that goes in that, right? I mean, those are opportune times to really look at marketing strategically, very specific programs, maybe new programs that you're starting, or redesign programs that might be in these new spaces as well. So there's also a lot of opportunity for those program specific marketing attempts as well.
And there are, just to add, there are examples of program specific campaigns that we're running right now. We have welding and fabrication, diesel technology, business management. And so as you look through that summary report, you can see some of the program specific campaigns. I wish we had enough funding to be able to do it for every program every year, but we have to be strategic.
Great. All right. So I had myself in the queue, and then we'll go to Rosie and then Steve. So Richard, this one I think is for you. Right, there you are. So I just want to acknowledge that in this board meeting tonight, I don't think we've touched on really very few subjects of like really big things that the college is working on that don't have to do with IT, right? Our COVID vaccination require implementation, our strategic enrollment management plan, program review. I mean, IT is, juggling some big balls right now. And I'm just really curious, because I have heard Marge say in the past that our IT is already at capacity. So what kind of additional resource do we need in that department? We've looked at programming resources that the board has been asked to add, but what kind of resource in terms of staffing do we need to be able to really do all these things well?
Thank you for asking that. First off, I will say we need a few more engineers, and they would be the programming and infrastructure. They have requested them. We have some people who have served us a long time and are retiring. We're trying to rehire those, but my managers, we meet weekly. We meet weekly with the classified staff included in our meeting, and we go over the workflows. We have had to juggle for capacities. That's why we're looking for vendor help with solutions we already own to help alleviate that time commitment. But today I need engineers and I could use a few more hands on deck, and that's my most immediate need right now.
Okay, we're going to go to Rosie and then Steve, followed by Austin. Thank you, Richard.
Well, I want to preface my question, one for Mindy, one for Brett, by saying I really appreciate all the hard work, and I appreciate the creativity in the work, both in terms of the management enrollment plan and marketing activities. My questions are, Mindy, I've been hearing a lot about strategic enrollment management for many, many years now. And so my question for you, and I don't require an answer tonight, but I would just ask you to think about this. what is there about this latest plan that is an improvement on that's going to work or produce results where somehow these previous plans seem not to do so? And Brett, my question for you, and I also don't require an answer tonight, but I appreciate seeing all the pictures of what our marketing looks like. What I'd really be interested in having, though, are some reports about the success of our marketing campaigns in generating actual contacts to the college. In actual, I'd be interested in some statistical data about marketing campaign results. We have a history in the marketing world of showing pictures of what we're doing, and it's hard to actually generate those results reports, but it's really more important to me to see that. So thanks, both of you.
Sure. Can I respond to that real quick?
Okay,
Chair?
I did see Mindy's hand go up first, but so I'm going to go to her and then go to you. Go ahead, Mindy.
Thank you. I've given a lot of thought to that, to your question. Why are we doing all of this work? What if it doesn't work? What makes this new and improved and better? It wasn't around for the last strategic plan, and I'm not aware of any before this. The things that we have tried to intentionally build into this is collaboration, buy-in, and follow-up. So we need to collaborate together and pool our resources across areas to make those strategies work. We need buy-in, and we need to trust each other to move forward. And I think we're really getting there, especially with guided pathways. Shout out to Jennifer Fry. And then following up every year, like, is this working? Are we actually doing the things that we said we would do? Now that we have good data, what does that look like? Let's do an assessment every year. And if we have to, let's redo it. Does that answer your question?
Brett?
Rosie, we have all of that information. I'm happy to sit down with you. Yesterday, I met with our marketing agency, and for example, we went through the programmatic campaigns, and we can actually track from the moment someone clicks on an ad on a social media platform all the way through the process. We know how many ads get clicked on. We know how many actually end up with applications getting submitted. And so I can tell you that it costs $20. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah, don't
we'll
just
share
share
that.
with me. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Steve next in the queue, followed by Austin.
Yeah, I have just a couple of kind of demographics related observations. You can answer that. You could, respond or sort of hold on to a response for a later date. I have seen a couple of presentations, not by LCC, but various consultants to higher ed, that we should expect nationally a significant decline in the number of 18-year-olds now through about the year 2026. I don't know what that looks like, locally and at the state level, but nationally, there's this that's anticipated, and so there's a big fight essentially amongst higher ed institutions for that declining population. So one concern or question is how you have thought about that, and what might happen to LCC relative to that down to 2026. And then the other observation is just the recent census data, excuse me, that came out that showed significant increase, right, in the number of Latinx identifying folks who reside in Oregon. It was sort of dramatic. And so you could imagine that therefore LCC's percent of minorities, particularly those who claiming to be Latinx, ought to increase with that census data, right? We ought to reflect the community around us, and it wouldn't just be Latinx. That was the most sort of kind of eye-opening change in the from the last census data. But the same kind of thing is happening with other minority populations. So I guess I'd like to see us pursue not just a broad base, 7,500, 8,500 enrollments, but some diversity numbers as well.
Austin?
So yeah, I really appreciate that we're having this really good conversation. And I was thinking back at Klamath Community College. One of the things that really drove our enrollments was the dual credit with the high school students, and also understanding what businesses, not only at the local community, but on a national level, need. Because it's one thing to get these, 7,500, 8,500 numbers. It's another thing of making sure that they're going into career pathways, and there's a desire for a career pathway for these students. I just want to kind of emphasize that we should also take a perspective of what employers are needing from in the labor force, and that also might assist in driving up enrollments. Because if there is a need and there is a kind of a dollar amount benefit for our students to graduate with the certification or degree and so forth, that also can drive enrollment. And I just want to encourage, when we're developing this plan, to also collaborate with our employers in our community, because that can definitely help with understanding first off, what our local needs are, and second off, giving that kind of financial incentive for enrollments, because there's a need in the workforce for these things. So anyway, I just wanted to emphasize that. I'm really glad we're having this conversation, and I would love to have this conversation again in the near future about enrollments.
Marge?
Thank you. I just want to refer the board to the bottom of the reports, and there's one that says Higher Education Commission, and it's got some disaggregated data in there. I think one of the things we're learning as we attend our DEI workshops at the state level is to be more proactive in providing this data to you. You should know that our disaggregated data surpasses the average data for Oregon. Our completion rates for our students of color is we're doing better than the average of the state, and we'll have a deeper discussion, a deeper dive on this, but I want to start presenting it to you so that you can see it. You can see the enrollment patterns, and then you can see the outcomes. What we didn't do this time was compare it, but I know it because I'm prepared to show the college community during opening day and kind of do a shout out to them, because they're doing better than the average students in Oregon.
Thanks for highlighting that, Marge. Mike?
Yes, I wanted to say that I spent well over 40 years in higher education, in student affairs, and much of that in leadership positions. And Mindy, when you rattled off all of the departments that you're responsible for, my head was spinning. That's a huge number, and it's also greatly diverse, a great diversity of specialty areas. And my guess is that that you're doing that very thinly staffed. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. And it makes me wonder how you're able to keep all those plates spinning at the same time. So I just wanted to get that on the table.
Okay, so thanks, Mike. I am not seeing anyone else in the queue at the moment, so I think I will move us on. I think so. We have one more discussion item, and then we have our reports from SGA and LCCF and LCCEA. So there is an item in the board docs that is our board retreat agenda. You're going to notice that we're focusing on primarily two things, and I am very hopeful that we will get a lot of work accomplished on those two areas and come to some really great outcomes after that time together. Were there any questions about the agenda for that retreat? It is on September 25th. All right.
Look forward to discussing the goals.
Okay, great. Thanks, Austin. Holly?
I'm sorry, I had one quick question. I had my calendar blocked out for that whole day, And then I see this rough draft of your agenda, and it starts at noon. I mean, yeah, at noon. So can you just clarify there?
Yeah, so we originally thought we were going to be able to be in person, and we didn't want to ask board members to spend an entire day in a Zoom room. So we decided to do 4 hours in the afternoon instead. It would have been great to be able to have the whole day together, but I do think it's a lot when we do it in Zoom.
Thank you.
Angela.
I know it's a super short timeline, but I'm wondering if we will have the code of ethics signature for this retreat, or is that something we just do at a meeting since we missed our July?
I think we'll try and build it into a work session, maybe be able to spend a little time on it in a work session. Does that seem okay? Great. Okay, I see the thumb. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move us on to our reports. And our first report is from the Lane Student Government Association, the SGA. I hope I got that correct. I think for some of us, the name is a little bit of a change, though I've heard it's not that it was done maybe some time ago. So do we have somebody? Jeremiah? Great.
Present.
Jeremiah, excellent.
All right. Good evening, members of the Board of Education, President Hamilton, and members of the gallery. My name is Jeremiah Vandergrift. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm the elected student body president for the coming academic year. I'd like to thank you for all the hard work and difficult decisions you've made both recently and in the past year. It is my hope that the Board of Education will continue towards putting the safety of my fellow students, LCC staff members, and ultimately our community first. Having completed the vaccination confirmation form, I and several students and I have have shared concerns very similar to the ones many staff members have expressed tonight. While the board's decision to make the beginning of fall term mostly online has been a controversial topic amongst many of the students I have talked to, I'm confident that most students, while disheartened that it's come to this, are grateful for the college's reassessment of the situation. Moving on more specifically to the student government, as a whole, most of the student government typically remains inactive over the summer. However, this year we are off to a slower start than we were hoping for. Currently, the vice president seat is vacant, and a few of our senators may decide to no longer attend Lane in the fall term for various reasons, which isn't too uncommon of an occurrence. However, one reason more unique to this year is that students are finding that they've taken most of the classes they need at Lane, with the exception of the ones that they simply do not find value in taking online, or find that the online learning environment is too difficult for the class in particular, which might partially account for the decline in enrollment of general studies study students that Paul Durrell previously mentioned earlier this meeting. Additionally, our previous director of student life and leadership has recently resigned. Because of the current turbulence around the structure of the student government, we've decided to hold off on gathering the SGA Senate until the start of the term for the time being. Once classes are in session, I'm hoping to appoint last year's student body president, Amber Coleman, to the vice president position, given that they are ratified by the SGA Senate. While the year is starting off much slower than I would have liked, the student government, as well as many other student organizations, are still hoping to find chances to provide some meaningful events that were much lacking in the previous years, despite the continuation of most classes being held online for the time being. One of the biggest challenges for student government and other student organizations last year was finding meaningful ways to engage with the student body with the online format. Many of our student clubs last year became inactive or disbanded as a result. This coming year, I'm hoping to cultivate an environment that welcomes these clubs back, as well as many new ones. Finally, the student government is planning on reconvening our governing documents committee as soon as possible in order to address any potential conflicts between the new college policy and procedures that pertain to the student government and our governing documents. Thank you for your time. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah. So let's go on to LCCEF, and we've got Frankie Cohen.
Hi, my name is Frankie Cohen, the president of LCC's Employee Federation. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. We currently have 2 teams bargaining separate agreements with the college. We've been working in solidarity with LCCEA to have a safe working conditions while our community is dealing with a surge in COVID cases and working to get the students and the employees vaccinated. Our faculty and our classified employees have made sure to that they've gotten their vaccines done before fall term. The same employees are wondering why it's been so hard for the college to get students vaccinated prior to fall term. Now we're watching the Delta variant start to flatten out. We have several new variants that are coming up. One is called the Mu COVID-19. It's a variant that some of us may have heard about. But how many of us have really looked at it? The variant was first documented in Colombia in January of this year. The variant's been listed by the WHO as a variant of interest. And what they do know is that it is more resistant to vaccines or natural immunity. They don't know the full extent of that, and frankly, the full extent of how it can surge or not surge in the US or our local communities, because it hasn't been widely studied yet. What I'm hoping is that we can stay vigilant in protecting our campus and hopefully be prepared if this variant or any other variant starts to affect us locally. The steps that we are taking now need to be carried on past this term. If we let our guard down too soon, we'll be back to where we are now. The other agreement that we're going over with the college is our economic reopener. Last year, we went ahead and accepted a very low raise of a 1% COLA and no steps. This year, we are asking something closer to an actual raise that can offset some of the rises of the cost of living in our community for the last couple of years. Our members are still struggling this year. Look at how the cost of living of essentials are rising. We're bearing those costs of those things from last year and this year. Our housing costs in our area are increasing again this year. The cost of fuel has skyrocketed this year. And even if you don't drive and you use an electric vehicle or walk, the cost of goods have gone up. Sorry, I'm having troubles tonight. The world is dealing with a pandemic, and there have been shortages of many products, and their costs have now risen. All of this has made it even more difficult for many members of the classified union to cover their costs at home. The classified union represents many people who work for the lowest wages on this campus. If you look at the pay scale that can be found on our HR website, you will see that a portion of the salary schedules fall below the minimum wage. So the person hired at level 1, step 6 is making below minimum wage. Level 4, step 2 also falls below minimum wage. We would like to see our college take that pay scale and drop those steps. That way they can keep our classified employees on wage scales that keeps them above poverty level pay. I urge the board to understand that classified employees work for this college because all of us love our community and that we care about the students that come through our doors and we want them to be successful. Every person that works here will stop what they are doing to assist students. Some will and have even stopped their work to walk a lost student to the correct building. We're just asking the board and the administration to care about us too. Thank you very much for listening to me tonight.
Thank you, Frankie. Up next, we have LCCEA and Adrian Mitchell.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm going to address 3 topics tonight: statewide and local updates from summer, labor relations, and safety on campus. First, I'd like to highlight some achievements in the legislative session that were supported by OEA. The first one is healthcare for part-time faculty at colleges and universities statewide. This is something that will be really transformative to our entire higher education system in Oregon. voting rights on the Higher Education Coordinating Commission for faculty, classified, and student representatives, as well as new rules for calculating hours worked at Oregon colleges and universities that will allow more part-time faculty to be eligible for federal public service loan forgiveness, which is hugely important for our part-time faculty because we have faculty who carry a substantial student debt load, achieving the advanced degrees necessary to work as faculty members. In addition, our OEA Community College Council worked over the summer and had a retreat, everything virtual, of course, which includes presidents of the 18 OEA Community College affiliated locals to adopt legislative objectives in preparation for the next big legislative session, and also produced a resolution on COVID safety and engaged in advocacy with the governor's office. Here locally, our LCCEA Committee on Racial Equity and Social Justice also had a retreat and finalized recommendations for recruitment and retention of BIPOC faculty and improving learning and working conditions on campus for a more just campus. And those will be shared with you in the upcoming term. Labor relations for LCCEA, we do have an arbitration scheduled next week regarding an unresolved grievance over the assignment of a manager to teach 2/3 time one term, even though managers are expressly excluded from the faculty bargaining unit. We have, I would say, many other issues that appear to be stalled with lack of responses regarding labor relations for, in some cases, 2 to 3 months. One of these is the governance system negotiations related to the workload impacts of changes to the system. This is something that is important for our accreditation, so we think it is critical that it be achieved quickly. In addition, I mentioned earlier the provision of healthcare to part-time faculty statewide, and one of the things that's really wonderful about this bill is that it's funded and it provides additional funding to community colleges throughout the state. At LCC, we have part-time faculty who are already covered under insurance. So this is going to mean that we will have a substantial amount of funding available to LCC. We estimate that it will be more than $500,000 per year in additional funding. LCCEA has requested meetings with the administration, but has not yet received any responses about meeting since late July. It is critical that we work together to ensure that all eligible faculty select LCC as their home institution. If we do not do so and follow the process that is necessary, we will not be able to receive this reimbursement from the state. So it's that's also very time sensitive. Regarding safety on campus, my last topic, I would like to express deep appreciation for your leadership as board members in requiring vaccines and ensuring that working and learning conditions on our campus are as safe as possible. Your leadership has been tremendous and so very essential. The clarity about the vaccine mandate and when it will be implemented is incredibly helpful. I do think it will be important for the college to consider an interim process for health professions students before October 24th, because health professions students are required under the governor's mandate to be fully vaccinated before that date, and may also be required to be vaccinated by clinical partners at the start of their clinical or lab experience. So I think that is one thing we might need to address in a more timely fashion. In addition, it has been a wonderful bright spot during the pandemic to work together in solidarity with Frankie Cohen and other LCCEF leaders to focus on the critically important role of public institutions in promoting public health broadly in the community and here at LCC. We have more work to do to protect LCC students and employees, and we look forward to reaching a reasonable agreement in bargaining soon. And thank you again, board members, for your critical leadership at this time.
Thank you, Adrian. Okay, so we have our information reports. Are there any questions from board members regarding the information reports? There are quite a few of them. And if you didn't get through them all, I know you can always email those questions to Marge and staff can follow up on them. So any questions? Seeing head shakes no. Marge, I believe the report you were referring to was at the college snapshot. I just want to say, yeah, I did find that really interesting, and I appreciated that you gave some reference for it, because I was looking at it and you answered the exact question I had, and so I look forward to hearing and seeing more information about that. All right, so that will move us on to board reports. And before we move into any reports from the board or OCCA board report, though you do have some updates there in the packet for you, or any ad hoc committee reports. I do have a late edition. I had received some information from OSBA yesterday, thanks to Marge, about the process for that they're currently involved in making nominations to their board and to their legislative policy committee. And I had sent an email out to board members yesterday asking if anybody had any interest. And Austin is interested in seeking a nomination to the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee position. And so I would like to present a motion that would allow us to nominate Austin, and the elections for that are in December. And so what we would need to do is basically, as a member of the OSBA, nominate Austin for this position. And I just wanted to check and make sure that there weren't any other board members that were also interested. Okay, seeing none, I am going to move that as a member of the OSBA, LCC, Lane Community College Board of Education, nominates Austin Folnegi for the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee position 6, which is the Lane region. It's
Second.
great. Okay. So would anybody like to speak to this motion?
Other than thank you. We definitely want some community college representation on that committee, and collaboration with OSBA, along with OCCA issues as well. So yeah, no, thank you for this nomination.
Okay, so I am going to ask Donna to call the roll on that.
Hey, Holly Johnson,
Yes.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Geister,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Yes, sirree.
Austin Folnegi,
Yes.
Rosie Pryor,
Yes.
Lisa Fragala.
Yes, thank you, Austin, for stepping up to that. So Austin, I will, as the board chair, I am now empowered to submit that nomination to OSBA, and we can follow up about what else we need to do regarding that. So are there any additional reports from the board and or from OCCA or ad hoc committee reports? Austin?
Yeah, I got for OCCA attached is a document which is the legislative. Speaking of legislative stuff, the legislative accomplishments for OCCA and what was advocated for. And I just want to also just in pulling this up, there's obviously some actions that we want to take as a board as a result of some of these laws, but also there's a lot of like laws and rules and Senate bills that really reflect some of the stuff that we've done as a community college, from the benefits navigator that we were a pilot for to the community benefit agreements and so forth. So I want to say that a lot of things that were won for community colleges, we as an institution have been a trailblazer for. So I just really want to emphasize that point. And we're in the closing process of hiring a new executive director for Oregon Community College Association. And one takeaway that I'd love for the board to think about, especially when we're going through the hiring process of for the president of our institution, is that there is a difference between having a interview for this type of position over Zoom and having it in person. And when you're hiring for a leader of an institution or an association, you definitely want to experience both, if at all possible. So when we get to that point where we're going to be in the final round of candidates and hiring for our president this year, I just want to advocate that having both of those experiences would be really beneficial. I know the leadership of our institution is going to be in our community, advocating for us and so forth. So having that interaction is very, very important. So I just wanted to advocate that for not only our ad hoc committee for finding candidates, but also when we get to that point as a board. So yeah, and I'll definitely share when we announce our executive director hire, which will be coming out soon.
Great, thanks, Austin. Any other updates from board members? I think that you had an earlier update from the ad hoc committee for presidential recruitment and selection. And so please feel free to continue to provide us feedback. That would be useful. And Austin, I love what you just said about that process. Great. Okay, so seeing no other updates from board members, our future meeting dates are, as mentioned earlier, September 25th, our fall retreat. And then our first work session, first meeting of the board in October is the 6th. And so that's what we have for our future meetings. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to everyone who communicated with the board today through public comment, and to all of our staff for their hard work on so many things that are critical to the college's mission and vision. Have a good evening. This meeting is adjourned.